Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Lamu. Lamu was born in 1990 in Nyawa, Tibet, Sichuan Province, China. She was the youngest of 3 children in a very poor family that barely made ends meet. She grew up with her older biological sister and stepbrother in a home shared with their parents and grandmother. The family collected rare medicinal plants, which they sold in local pharmacies for a meager income. After completing only 3 grades, Lamu had to leave school to work with her family members and help support them. Along with the adults, she climbed high into the mountains to find rare herbs and flowers with healing properties. Lamu was well versed in these plants and had a deep love for nature, admiring its beauty and generosity. As social media popularity grew, she created her own account on a Chinese equivalent of TikTok, where she posted short videos showcasing her daily life, household activities, and the beauty of her native province. She called herself a mountain girl and had a deep affection for her work. Unlike many bloggers, she wasn't chasing fame. Instead, fame found her. Her audience adored Lamu for her smile, purity, and childlike spontaneity. Lamu never prepared content in advance, speaking her mind and feelings, and sometimes singing folk songs while showcasing the mountain landscapes. She never used makeup or filters, and her hands and feet bore calluses, scratches, and scars, visibly evidencing the hard and long labor behind them. Gradually, Lamu's subscriber count grew, and not only locals, but also tourists visiting the area began to recognize her. They referred to the blogger as that sweet mountain girl, offering warm words, expressing gratitude for her work, and asking for photos. Lamu was not proud of her fame, but was delighted that her activities resonated with the audience and brought joy to others. Lamu's personal life was marred by her abusive husband, Tong Li. For many years, she suffered at his hands, enduring beatings and humiliations, but tried not to show her deep unhappiness. Tong Li was born in 1990 in Sichuan Province, China, into a simple and modest family. His parents adored him and spoiled him from an early age. At 12, he quit school and started working as a courier, earning little but keeping all the money to himself. This marked the beginning of his greedy, arrogant, and selfish nature. As a teenager, Tong began dealing in banned substances, stealing, and gambling, and took pride in getting away with it. He aimed to earn respect in the criminal underworld, become rich, and escape poverty. At 15, he left home and joined a gang, engaging in illegal activities. Meanwhile, Tong's parents opened a successful spice and tea shop, investing all their efforts and resources into it. When the business took off, Tong returned home, offering to help expand and promote the family business. In reality, he just wanted to live off his relatives' hard work. Tong considered himself successful and wealthy, spending money on personal luxuries and boasting to friends about his expensive items. He even claimed the store's success as his own, while his family worked hard daily. He maintained a separate under-the-table business with local criminals. Lamu and Tong met when they were 17. Tong was enchanted by her beauty, kindness, and sincerity, and courted her earnestly, giving gifts and promising to change for her. Lamu quickly fell for his charms, believing she had met her Prince Charming. They developed a romantic relationship that lasted almost 2 years before they decided to make it official. Tong proposed to Lamu when he turned 19, and she eagerly accepted. However, their parents were not thrilled about their decision to marry, believing they were too young to start a family. Lamu moved into her mother-in-law's house, but soon, Tong started disappearing with his old friends again. He returned to his unlawful activities, frequently consumed alcohol, and his behavior towards his wife changed drastically. Tong became crude, self-centered, and aggressive, taking a portion of the store's earnings and spending all the money on his own needs. Lamu and her husband Tong's relationship started to deteriorate. They frequently argued, with Lamu urging him to change his ways, give up drinking, and stop associating with criminals. However, Tong refused to listen, believing no one had the right to tell him what to do. Their home became a battleground with conflicts erupting daily. Even when Lamu became pregnant, the situation didn't improve. One day, Tong's behavior shocked Lamu. She declared she would return to her parents' home, refusing to tolerate his treatment. Her mother-in-law, who had witnessed the incident, intervened, scolding her son and telling him he had no right to treat Lamu that way. The mother-in-law convinced Lamu to stay, promising that the abuse would stop. Lamu believed her and gave her husband another chance, a decision she would later regret. The abuse continued, with Tong regularly becoming physically violent, only to apologize afterward, begging Lamu not to leave him. Each time, Lamu wanted to believe he had changed, but the cycle repeated over and over. When she finally decided to leave, Tong threatened to take their son away and harm her and her parents. Fearing for her safety, Lamu stayed. Their child became Tong's tool for manipulation and blackmail. Lamu kept her nightmare hidden from her relatives, including her close older sister. After her mother's passing in 2012, Lamu found herself managing her parents' household and caring for her elderly father and grandmother. She continued to climb mountains to gather herbs, using the time to escape her husband's wrath and find solace in her thoughts. In 2017, Lamu gave birth to a second son, but her relations with Tong remained strained. Her mother-in-law stopped intervening on her behalf. Around the same time, Lamu created a social media account, posting videos about local beauty, flowers, and herbs. She gained a large following who admired her work and knowledge of traditional Chinese medicine. Her online presence became an outlet for her to express herself and momentarily escape her difficult reality. Lamu kept her domestic violence a secret, never complaining to her audience about her situation. However, when her grandmother passed away in 2019, she posted a video expressing her grief. Her followers supported her, unlike her husband, who became furious and struck her. Lamu finally decided to leave her abusive husband in January 2020 after enduring another violent incident. She took her sons and moved back to her parents' home, filing for divorce. At first, she felt calm and confident, despite trying to hide a large bruise under her eye. However, the court's decision to divide custody of the sons, leaving the younger child with her and the older with her ex-husband, was a devastating blow. During the divorce proceedings, her ex-husband suddenly changed his tactics, romantically pursuing her again and proposing they start over and not break up the family. For a couple of months, he pretended to be a repentant man, giving her flowers, creating celebrations, helping around the house, and even joining her on trips. Lamu's heart softened, and she believed he had genuinely changed. By the end of March, they were married, but the fairy tale ended soon after Lamu returned to her husband's house. He reverted to being cruel, mean, and selfish, brutally attacking her nearly to death within 2 weeks of remarrying. He snatched her phone, hurled it against the wall, and battered her mercilessly. Lamu fled the house, barefoot, and went to the police, seeking protection. However, they only took her statement and advised her to resolve the family conflict on her own. Lamu decided to hide in another village to avoid endangering her relatives. Her enraged husband was ready to end her life, but didn't know where to find her. He assumed she might have gone to her sister's house, so he visited and began yelling, demanding to know where Lamu was. When her sister claimed ignorance, he struck her repeatedly, fracturing her cheekbone, eye socket, and nose. After the Lamu's sister filed a police report, Lamu's ex-husband was finally held accountable, but not arrested. During the second divorce proceedings, the court left both sons with the father, as the wealthy Lee family's influence proved to be the deciding factor. The heartbroken mother was crushed with grief. 3 weeks after the second divorce, Lamu went to the mountains, recorded a video of herself singing and dancing, trying to relieve stress. However, her ex-husband interpreted it as her celebrating their separation, which blinded him with rage. On the evening of September 14, 2020, Lamu started a live stream, chatting with her followers while dressed in a traditional Tibetan outfit, softly singing folk songs. Suddenly, a terrible noise erupted off camera, as if someone had kicked the door in. Lamu turned pale, frozen in fear, staring at the person entering. She jumped up, trying to escape, but the tripod with her smartphone fell, camera down. Viewers could only hear the heavy footsteps, the sound of a liquid splashing on the floor and walls, and Lamu screaming for help. Her father's voice pleaded with the intruder to calm down and put down the knife. Lamu warned her family that the room was doused in gasoline and begged them to save themselves. A sinister silence fell, followed by the click of a lighter and a piercing scream. The broadcast cut off as the crackle of flames spreading through the room grew louder. Followers were left stunned, refusing to accept that they had just witnessed a tragedy. It was not a prank, unfortunately. The worst had occurred. Tong had brutally exacted revenge on his ex-wife, Lamu, for leaving him. He rode a motorcycle to her house, bringing a canister of gasoline and a large knife. Through the windows, he saw Lamu in the kitchen on the ground floor and kicked the door open. Lamu was caught off guard, barely understanding what was happening before she tried to flee. Tong prevented her escape, dousing her with fuel and wounding her with the knife before setting the house on fire. At that moment, her father and brother ran outside, shouting for neighbors to help, but they did not understand the gravity of the situation as the flames erupted. Lamu's relatives rushed back into the house, but the old wooden beams were burning like torches, blocking the entrance. Miraculously, firefighters took about 2 hours to extinguish the fire. When they entered, they found Lamu in the room, her skin charred black and literally melted to the floor. Incredibly, Lamu was still breathing, with a faint pulse detectable. She was rushed to the hospital, where doctors were horrified by her condition. Over 90% of her body surface was burned, and her lungs had nearly cooked from the heated air and smoke. Despite her critical condition, Lamu desperately continued to fight for her life. She was in a deep coma, and her condition was deemed critical. The city's burn center was prepared to help, but the treatment cost was a staggering $1,000,000, a sum her family could not afford after losing everything in the fire. Lamu's father decided to seek help from her followers, writing a letter explaining that her ex-husband had attacked her, attempting to end her life, but she had survived, and doctors held out a slim hope. The letter was posted on her social account, along with a plea from her sister to all compassionate people to help Lamu, providing an account number for donations. The necessary funds for treatment were raised within an hour of the post, and people continued to send money. Lamu was transferred to the burn center, where she received the necessary care, and her condition was stabilized. At one point, it seemed she might recover. Tragically, after 2 weeks of fighting for her life, Lamu's heart could not endure any longer, and she passed away without regaining consciousness. She was only 30 years old. Tong was arrested the day after committing this heinous act. At the trial, his mother desperately defended her son, who had inflicted such cruelty, claiming that he did it out of intense love for his ex-wife and stress from their divorce. Nevertheless, the verdict was severe and just. The court found Tong guilty of deliberate cruel deprivation of life and sentenced him to death. Additionally, the court mandated his family to compensate Lamu's relatives for the property loss due to the house fire. Tong attempted to appeal the verdict several times, but the decision remained unchanged. In July 2022, the sentence was carried out and Tong Li was executed. 2 years after the tragic event that ended Lamu's life, her relatives rebuilt the house on the site of the burned one and were able to move back in on the ground floor. Her sister set up a small memorial altar with photographs of Lamu. The court left the orphaned boys in the custody of their paternal grandparents, the Li family, who remained one of the wealthiest in the village and were believed to provide the children with better living conditions. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Kelsey Turner. Kelsey Turner was born on March 5, 1993, in Norfolk, Virginia, to Samantha Ingram, a would-be model and dancer, and Christopher Ingram, a laborer. As the second child, she grew up with her older brother Colin. Shortly after her birth, the family moved to Jonesboro, Arkansas, where Kelsey spent most of her childhood. After her parents divorced a few years later, her father returned to Virginia and lost contact with his former wife and children. Kelsey developed into a stunning beauty with a perfect figure, ideal for modeling. She wasn't interested in school, preferring to attend parties, go on dates, and participate in events. Her dream was to become famous, feature on magazine covers, give interviews, and walk the red carpet. Although she lacked talent, her youth and good looks were her biggest assets. In high school, Kelsey began attending modeling castings with her mother Samantha's strong support. Samantha had once aspired to be a model herself and was enthusiastic about her daughter's endeavors. However, Kelsey only managed to secure a couple of shoots for clothing catalogs. At 18, Kelsey married Judy Turner when she was already pregnant. Shortly after, she gave birth to a daughter named Beverly. However, their marriage was brief and ended in divorce by the time she was 20. After abandoning her runway modeling career, Kelsey decided to pursue a career as a men's magazine model. She created a portfolio featuring provocative photos and submitted them to various publications, which quickly caught the attention of several men's magazines. Kelsey viewed this as the start of a promising career and her path to a glamorous, carefree lifestyle, which she had always aspired to. Over the next few years, she regularly received offers for photo shoots. She enthusiastically gave interviews, attended events, and attempted to establish valuable connections. Notable highlights of her career included one-off shoots for Playboy and Maxim, as well as a photo session and interview with 110 magazine. For these opportunities, she traveled to Los Angeles and Las Vegas. In an interview, Kelsey candidly described herself, stating that she was a blonde with a curvy figure and a slim waist, and asked what more one would need for happiness. She also shared that she enjoyed partying, spending time with friends, and living life to the fullest, believing that life is short and should be lived beautifully and joyfully. Kelsey was not overly concerned about her future, frequently changed partners, and quickly spent the money she earned or received from admirers. At 23, Kelsey had another child, a son named Josh, but the father refused to acknowledge him or marry her. As her modeling career declined, Kelsey turned to social media to build a following. She regularly posted provocative photos of herself in swimsuits, lingerie, and revealing outfits, which were heavily edited to make her look like a Barbie doll. She also shared pictures of herself at trendy boutiques, nightclubs, and popular entertainment venues, creating an illusion of a luxurious and carefree life. However, behind this facade, Kelsey, a single mother of 2 young children, was struggling to make ends meet. She didn't know how to manage her finances wisely and spent all her money as soon as she got it. In 2016, Kelsey faced a serious crisis after an incident involving her daughter, who was left traumatized and became withdrawn and mute, despite being physically unharmed. The incident led to therapy sessions with Dr. Thomas Burchard, a renowned child psychiatrist in Monterey, California, which ultimately contributed to a tragic event years later. Dr. Thomas Kirk Burchard was born in Boston, Massachusetts, on February 16, 1948, to a family of a prominent architect and engineer. His family later moved to Virginia, where his father taught at Harvard and the Architectural College at the Technological Institute. Thomas spent his childhood and youth in Virginia. Unlike his father, Thomas chose a career in medicine, specifically child psychology. After graduating from medical school and completing his thesis, Thomas worked as a pediatric psychiatry resident in several prestigious hospitals and lectured at colleges nationwide. Eventually, Dr. Burchard was employed at a public clinical hospital on the Monterey Peninsula in California, where he worked for over 40 years as a highly sought-after pediatric psychiatrist. Dr. Burchard was a highly respected doctor with a reputation for connecting with his young patients and taking on the toughest cases. He had a doctorate from the University of California, Berkeley, and an impressive academic record with over 300 scientific publications cited nearly 40,000 times, giving him an H-index of 81. He was also known for his kindness, responsiveness, and generosity, particularly towards his young patients from low-income families. He even paid for hospital treatments for sick children and assisted single mothers. Dr. Burchard lived with a woman named D.Y., who was described as his assistant, housekeeper, lover, or fiancée. She was close to him and the first to notice changes in his behavior, which suggested early signs of dementia or Alzheimer's disease. As he approached his 70th birthday, Dr. Burchard became increasingly forgetful, absent-minded, and inattentive. To cope, he kept detailed diaries and notebooks to record everything, including names, dates, and events, to avoid confusion. He always carried a notebook with him containing sensitive information like banking details, account numbers, passwords, and card pins. Dr. Thomas Burchard's trusting nature led him to increase his financial support to those in need from hundreds to thousands of dollars. Kelsey Turner took advantage of Dr. Burchard's generosity. During her first visit with her daughter, she tearfully told the doctor that as a single mother of two, she couldn't afford his expensive services. Feeling empathetic, Dr. Burchard offered to treat her child for free and even gave her $300 to help with her children's needs. Kelsey was surprised, but soon realized that by sharing fabricated, tearful stories about her struggles, she could extract more money from the elderly doctor. At their next session, she concocted a performance, tearfully describing her younger son's illness and claiming she couldn't afford his expensive medication. This time, she specified a fake amount, and Dr. Burchard gave it to her in full. Kelsey's luck had changed, and from that point on, she frequently fabricated emotional stories to extract large sums of money from the trusting older man. Instead of using the money to support her children, she spent it on her own leisure activities, luxury clothing, and beauty treatments. Unwilling to return to her hometown in Virginia, Kelsey convinced Thomas to pay for her rental housing in California, claiming it would be easier to find a job and the climate was better for her children. It didn't take much persuasion for the doctor to agree, and he paid for the apartment. There were whispers that Kelsey and Thomas were romantically involved, and that this was the reason the respected doctor accommodated her every request. While these whispers may have held some truth, Kelsey maintained that Thomas had a paternal affection for her and her children, and was helping them selflessly. This was supported in court by Judy, although she added that Kelsey shamelessly took advantage of the doctor's kindness and his declining mental state due to dementia. Thomas paid for Kelsey's rental housing, bills, and gave her large sums of cash for necessities. He also rented a luxurious Mercedes-Benz convertible for her, rather than a practical family vehicle suitable for transporting children safely. As Kelsey's modeling career came to an end, her youth faded, and she stopped receiving offers for photo shoots. But instead of getting a job, she relied on her wealthy benefactor, Thomas, for financial support. Over nearly 3 years, Kelsey tried to break free from Thomas, blackmailing and threatening him. Despite this, he spent around $500,000 on her and her children. However, Kelsey wasted all the money on luxuries, including breast augmentation and liposuction, hoping to revive her modeling career. She prioritized partying over her children, neglecting them in the process. As a result, her ex-husband gained sole custody of their daughter through the court, stripping Kelsey of her parental rights. She was left with only her younger son, whose father had never shown interest in his child. Thomas was furious when he discovered what was happening, not because of the girl's ex-husband, but because of Kelsey's behavior. He realized she was a neglectful mother who didn't care for her children and spent all the money meant for them on her own desires, entertainment, and clothes. Dr. Burchard decided to have a serious talk with Kelsey, telling her he would no longer fund her extravagant and idle lifestyle. In response, Kelsey threatened to spread false rumors that the respected child psychiatrist had inappropriate, intimate interests in his young patients. Although this was a lie, any gossip on the matter could severely damage the doctor's reputation. Reluctantly, Burchard agreed to Kelsey's terms and continued to transfer money and pay her bills. In early 2019, Kelsey decided to move to Las Vegas with her son, intending to revive her modeling career. As usual, she expected Thomas, whom she continued to blackmail, to finance this venture. The doctor rented a house that Kelsey had chosen and transferred the amount of money she requested. After this, Kelsey disappeared for 2 months without giving any sign of her whereabouts. In late February 2019, Kelsey resurfaced because she was running out of money. She called Thomas, crying, and told him about her severe illness, inability to work, and struggle to provide for her son. However, when the doctor refused to help, Kelsey's tone changed abruptly, and she began threatening and blackmailing him again. It's crucial to highlight that Judy had been pushing Dr. Burchard for a while to report Kelsey to the authorities, exposing her blackmail and extortion attempts. Judy also recommended getting Child Protective Services involved, considering Kelsey's past, having already lost parental rights to her older daughter and her inability to properly care for her young son. Anticipating a potential court case, Dr. Burchard took steps to ensure he had the backing of his colleagues, keeping them informed about the situation and securing their promises of support. To persuade Kelsey to leave Thomas alone, Judy previously tried talking to her directly, but Kelsey responded with threats of retaliation. This time, Dr. Burchard decided to travel to Las Vegas to verify Kelsey's claims, knowing what he would likely find. Judy attempted to discourage him from going, but the elderly man was resolute. She then advised him to bring her or one of his friends along, but Thomas insisted that this was a personal matter that he needed to resolve on his own. Dr. Burchard set out on his journey on March 1st, 2019. On the morning of March 7th, a group of tourists driving through Nevada took a detour from the main highway onto a dirt road leading to Lake Mead. They stumbled upon a solitary Mercedes-Benz convertible parked in the middle of the desert with its windows up and roof closed, but no one in sight. The tourists found this suspicious and decided to investigate. As they approached the vehicle, they noticed one of the windows was shattered. Upon peering inside, they discovered signs of a violent struggle with bloodstains throughout the interior. The tourists promptly reported their disturbing discovery to the police. Law enforcement officers arrived at the scene around noon, greeted by an overwhelming stench of decay under the scorching sun. The source of the odor was quickly located when they opened the trunk of the car. Beneath a pile of items and rags, they found the lifeless body of an elderly man, next to whom lay a blood-stained baseball bat. It was later confirmed that the body belonged to Dr. Burchard, who had been missing for 5 days. Judy had reported his disappearance on March 2nd, when she couldn't reach him at their scheduled time, and she immediately feared the worst. She contacted the police, hoping against hope that he would be found alive. Tragically, that was not the case. The autopsy revealed a horrific series of injuries on the elderly man's body. He had sustained multiple abrasions, bruises, and superficial cuts. The examination also showed that he had suffered severe head injuries, likely inflicted by the baseball bat found beside him in the trunk. Part of his ear had been severed, and his hands bore numerous cuts, suggesting a desperate attempt to defend himself. Additionally, there were bruises on his face with a peculiar imprinted pattern. The most shocking discovery, however, was that the man had been placed in the trunk while still alive, where he slowly suffocated under the intense desert sun. As the police investigated the crime scene, they discovered that the car was rented in Kelsey Turner's name, making her the prime suspect. Judy provided the authorities with the address of the house where the blonde lived and where the deceased doctor had gone, as it was also rented in his name. However, when the police arrived, they found the house empty. Inside, they noticed scattered containers of cleaning agents and a strong smell of household chemicals, indicating a hasty attempt to erase any evidence of the crime. The house had been occupied by Turner, her 4-year-old son, her new boyfriend John Logan Kennison, and 2 neighbors, Diana Pina and Jeremy Eric. Since they had all fled, they became suspects, as it seemed unlikely that the petite blonde could have inflicted such severe injuries on the doctor or moved his body to the car trunk alone. The police managed to interview Jeremy, who recalled that he and his girlfriend had left the house while the doctor was still alive and unharmed. According to Jeremy, his girlfriend had drunk too much and flirted with the doctor, trying to get a few $100s, similar to Kelsey's tactics. This had enraged Kelsey, who accused the woman of trying to steal her boyfriend. The two women almost got into a fight, and Jeremy had to quickly take his girlfriend away from the house. He hadn't returned for several days and was unaware of the subsequent events. Police discovered that Dr. Burchard habitually carried a notebook containing bank account details and passwords, but frequently misplaced it. Following his murder, the notebook went missing, and substantial sums were withdrawn from two of his accounts on March 3rd. The authorities promptly blocked the accounts and cards, and on March 21st, Kelsey and her boyfriend JN were apprehended in Stockton, California, after a second attempt to withdraw funds. Prior to their arrest, the couple, accompanied by their child, had been evading detection by hiding in motels, constantly changing their location and paying in cash. They later expressed regret for not completely depleting Burchard's accounts initially, and subsequently planned to empty them and flee to Mexico with the money. However, by the time they made their second attempt, the authorities had already blocked the accounts, leading to their capture. According to Diana, after Jeremy and his girlfriend left, a heated argument broke out between Turner and Dr. Burchard. This was triggered by the doctor's refusal to give Turner another cent. In a fit of rage, Turner threatened to ruin Dr. Burchard's reputation by spreading false rumors about his behavior with his young patients. As the situation escalated and Turner became physically aggressive, Dr. Burchard locked himself in a room for safety. However, JN forced open the door and violently attacked the elderly doctor with a bat, causing a severe hematoma and a nosebleed. Diana intervened, begging everyone to calm down. Upon seeing Dr. Burchard's condition, she urged them to take him to the hospital, worried about the consequences of their actions. Before they left, Dr. Burchard promised Diana that he would report to the police that he was attacked and robbed by strangers. The four of them then drove to the garage, where Dr. Burchard was seated in the back of the car. Kelsey instructed Diana to return to the house and thoroughly clean up, making sure to remove all traces of blood. Diana started cleaning as told, but heard Dr. Burchard's cries from the garage. Rushing back, she saw Kelsey and Kennison brutally attacking him, trapping him in the car. It was clear they never meant to take him to the hospital, but planned to kill him with a bat and knife. Diana was forced back to cleaning, fearing for her life. Later, she heard the cars drive away, and only Johns returned with Kelsey. From the start, Diana chose to cooperate with the authorities by agreeing to a plea deal, which meant she would reveal everything she knew about the case. In return, she avoided being charged with being an accomplice and received a relatively light 3-year sentence for tampering with evidence. In contrast, her former lovers refused to take responsibility and instead blamed each other for the crime. However, it was easy to prove their guilt because they left behind significant evidence in the car, and phone records showed they were in the desert on the night of March 2nd, where the car with the body was abandoned. Kennison was convicted of second-degree homicide and received a 45-year prison sentence, with the possibility of parole after 18 years. The situation with Turner was more complicated. After her arrest, she announced that she was pregnant, which significantly delayed her trial. While in prison, she gave birth to a girl, and both the newborn and her son were placed in the care of social services because none of Turner's relatives were willing to take on the responsibility. In January 2023, following her lawyer's advice, Kelsey Turner admitted her guilt and was sentenced to 25 years in prison, with the possibility of parole no earlier than 10 years from the start of her sentence. She is currently serving her sentence at the Florence McClure Women's Correctional Center in Las Vegas. In conclusion, it is worth noting that ABC's documentary series 20th Century aired an episode in February 2023 titled A Model Murder, which detailed the heinous crime committed by Turner and her boyfriend against Dr. Burchard. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Vicki Roberts. Vicki Roberts, born Victoria Smith, was born in September 1984 in Cheshire, England. She grew up in a conservative and religious family with an older sister. The sisters attended a Christian school where they developed their musical talents and sang in the choir. Vicki was known for being kind, friendly, and helpful, always willing to lend a hand. After high school, Vicki enrolled in university and worked part-time at an IKEA store to fund her education. That's where she met Michael Roberts, a charismatic and sociable young man who was only a year older than her. Michael was also a student and an athlete who took care of his appearance. Initially, Vicki found Michael too talkative and intrusive, but he eventually won her over with his charming personality. Michael was born in June 1983 in Warrington, Cheshire, to a prominent chemical engineer and his family. As the eldest of two sons, Michael was raised with high expectations and strict discipline. His parents instilled in him the belief that he was destined for greatness, and Michael grew up to be ambitious, driven, and confident. He was a natural socialite, effortlessly making friends and commanding attention with his charismatic personality. His striking appearance, sense of humor, and intellectual curiosity only added to his charm. However, his parents' constant praise and emphasis on his superiority may have contributed to Michael's growing narcissism, which intensified over time. Michael desperately wanted to please his parents, so he strived to be the perfect son and meet their expectations. Meanwhile, Roberts, a womanizer, had a string of girlfriends and mistresses. He was skilled at secretly dating multiple people simultaneously, making each one believe they were the only one. He got a thrill from pursuing girls, particularly those who seemed out of his reach. One such girl was Vicki, who Michael was determined to win over. Initially, she kept him at arm's length, rejecting even his casual invitations to walk together after work or grab coffee. Vicki was a dedicated student and devoted her free time to church activities, leaving no room for dating or romance. It took Michael a few months to convince Vicki to go out with him. He won her over with his charming and sweet nature, showering her with flowers, gifts, and little surprises. He even took her to meet his parents, who adored her and gave their seal of approval for their son's choice. Vicki was convinced of his sincerity and eventually agreed to be his girlfriend. Michael became her first love and for a while, her only one. She was deeply happy with him, and it seemed like destiny had brought them together. Michael, too, seemed to fall in love and was ready to settle down, but their happiness was short-lived. From the outside, their relationship looked perfect. They were both young, attractive, full of energy, ambitious, and had big plans for the future. However, Vicki soon discovered that Michael had an irrepressible sexual appetite and a passion for experimentation in bed. At first, Michael didn't pressure Vicki too much, fearing she would leave him. But once he was confident she wouldn't go anywhere, he revealed his true desires. The modest and religious Vicki was shocked by what was happening, but she was deeply in love with Michael and trusted him. For a long time, she kept their bedroom secrets hidden behind closed doors. Michael made her an official marriage proposal, which she happily accepted. She genuinely believed that after the wedding, her fiancé would stop his extreme experiments. Meanwhile, one of Vicki's closest friends began to notice that she was hiding bruises and small injuries under her clothes. The friend confronted Vicki, asking if her fiancé was abusing her and if she needed help. At first, Vicki denied everything, but eventually admitted that the marks were a result of her fiancé's extreme intimate experiments. Michael had a strong passion for bondage and using various toys and devices. Vicki confided in her friend that they had intimate encounters up to 5 times a day, but Michael still remained unsatisfied. He saw himself as a skilled lover, and intimacy was an art form and a way for him to express himself. Although Michael occasionally made concessions when Vicky refused to participate in some of his dangerous experiments, he usually managed to convince her to go along with his desires. After defending her diploma, Vic found herself facing an unplanned pregnancy, which prompted her to change jobs. She was soon hired as an account manager at a logistics company. Around the same time, Michael left IKEA and began working as a sales consultant at a large retail chain selling electronics. Michael flourished in his new role, leveraging his charisma, communication, and persuasive skills to consistently exceed sales targets. As a result, he quickly rose through the ranks, earning a promotion to senior sales. The management even considered transferring him to the main office, but first he needed to undergo training and improve his qualifications. As Michael attended training sessions and traveled to London for business, he felt proud and accomplished. However, in the process, he began to neglect his young fiancée, Vic. He only seemed to remember her existence when he needed intimacy, and their relationship suffered as a result. They stopped talking, hardly spent time together, and outside of the bedroom, Vic seemed to be invisible to him. Michael started having numerous affairs with co-workers, clients, and mere acquaintances while simultaneously planning his wedding to Vicky. He had an insatiable appetite for intimacy with various women, which boosted his self-esteem and gave him a sense of accomplishment. When Vicky discovered she was pregnant, she excitedly shared the news with Michael, expecting him to expedite their wedding plans. However, Michael's reaction was one of anger and frustration. He insisted that Vicky terminate the pregnancy, citing their young age and the idea that they had their whole lives ahead of them to have children. Vicky was shocked by his demand, but refused to consider abortion, prompting Michael to try to persuade her through other means. Michael convinced the bride, Vicky, that if her religious parents found out she was pregnant and living with him out of wedlock, they would be furious. He promised that they would keep the abortion a secret and have children after they got married. Vicky was torn, but Michael's persuasive nature eventually won her over, and she had the procedure. However, the abortion came with complications, and Vicky spent several days in the hospital, followed by 3 weeks of recovery. The doctor strictly forbade her from having sex during this time, which sent Michael into a rage. It dawned on Vicky that Michael had mental health issues and a sex addiction. Without intimacy, he became unhinged, often leaving the house, claiming he had urgent work matters to attend to. Vicky suspected that Michael was seeking intimacy outside their relationship, but she genuinely believed that everything would change after they got married, and she could help him overcome his infidelity. However, their 2-year engagement revealed a different reality. Michael had no intention of marrying Vicky, as his current situation suited him perfectly. He had a loyal fiancée at home who took care of his household needs, as well as multiple mistresses on the side, whom he regularly replaced. Vicky always took Michael's promises at face value, even when she discovered his infidelity. She forgave him as long as he assured her it was the last time and that he would change. However, as time passed, Vicky began to pressure Michael for marriage, as she wanted a complete family and children. Her parents also increasingly raised this question, but what ultimately pushed the issue was the insistence of Michael's parents, whom he didn't want to disappoint. Vicky was a kind and sweet person whom everyone loved. Her parents-in-law adored her and considered her an ideal match for their son. They were eager to see the couple get married and have grandchildren. With the help of their parents, the couple organized a grand wedding with all the trimmings, including a white dress and a limousine. The newlyweds looked happy and in love, with a long and fulfilling life ahead of them. After the wedding, the couple settled into a large and cozy house in a prestigious area of Warrington, not far from Robert's parents. However, what the relatives didn't know was that Michael had a dark side that Vicky was already well aware of. Despite being married, Michael did not love Vicky and only saw her as a way to appear normal in the eyes of others. Vicky never complained about Michael's infidelities and strange behaviors, and he was able to continue cheating on her without anyone suspecting a thing. At work, Michael was successful, earning promotions and a good salary after being transferred to a new office. Michael's direct supervisor, Carrie Hall, was a 10-year-old older, divorced mother who worked as the head of administration at Phones 4u. Despite her busy schedule, she was attractive, well-groomed, and strong-willed as required by her position. For a long time, she ignored the signs of attention from her young subordinate, Michael. However, Michael saw this as a challenge and made a concerted effort to win her over, using his natural charm and eloquence. After about a month, Carrie reciprocated and they began a romantic relationship, secretly meeting in hotel rooms. Carrie described their relationship as turbulent, passionate, and experimental. As a mature, self-confident woman, Carrie was flattered by the attention of a younger man and was open to trying new things. With her, Michael could fulfill his fantasies that he couldn't with his modest wife. Michael frequently deceived his wife by claiming he was working late or attending corporate trainings, when in reality, he was meeting his mistress. He confided in his mistress about his unhappiness in his marriage, calling it a youthful mistake and expressing his willingness to divorce his wife. However, he failed to take action as his wife refused to grant him a divorce. The affair with Carrie lasted over a year, but she didn't pressure him for divorce, content with their secret hotel trysts, physical marks, and risky games. Carrie, a sports enthusiast who always took pride in her figure, suddenly changed her style after starting a relationship with Michael. She began wearing long-sleeved, high-necked clothes, which was unusual for her. A concerned friend noticed the change and Carrie confided in her about Michael's unusual intimate preferences. She revealed that Michael enjoyed experimenting with rough, controlling behaviors, such as biting, squeezing, and tying her up. Carrie showed her friend the physical marks these activities had left on her body. Although her friend urged her to go to the police, Carrie refused, saying that she had consented to these activities and that Michael usually warned her beforehand. However, she admitted that things sometimes got out of control, like when Michael would strangle her to supposedly enhance her pleasure, causing her to lose consciousness. Despite fearing these strangulation games, Carrie continued to succumb to Michael's persuasion, hoping that he would eventually tire of these cruel experiments or that she would become desensitized to them. Michael's wife and mistresses didn't try to intervene. Before they got married, Vicky had already suspected Michael's infidelity through open letters and a love letter. Despite knowing about his affairs, she believed her love and care could transform him into an exemplary family man. However, after their wedding, the situation deteriorated, and Michael convincingly denied his cheating. Vicky decided to investigate her husband's infidelity by looking through his phone while he was asleep. She was shocked to discover numerous intimate conversations between Michael and Carrie, as well as other girls, including explicit photos. Despite her devastation, Vicky did not want to upset her family, so she kept the discovery to herself and moved in with a friend instead of telling her parents and sister. Before leaving, Vicky wrote a heartfelt letter to Michael, confessing her love for him and acknowledging that he was the central figure in her life. However, she also made it clear that she was aware of his infidelity and would not tolerate it. Vicky informed Michael that she was giving him time to reflect on their relationship, but she would not stay in the marriage if his behavior continued. She wrote the letter by hand and left it on the refrigerator for him to find. Michael didn't feel emotional about the message, nor was he upset by his wife's departure. However, he didn't want to lose the comfort of having a quiet and obedient partner who took care of the household and put up with his quirky behavior and unusual tastes. That same evening, Michael went to Vicky's friend's house, bringing a large bouquet of flowers. He got down on his knees, apologized, and begged Vicky to come back to him, promising to be faithful and making her his one and only. Vicky wanted to believe him and decided to return home, where a new mistress was waiting. Michael didn't stop seeing Carrie, but he became more cautious and even made an effort to come home for dinner, which his wife had carefully prepared. He deleted messages on his phone, changed the password on his social media profiles, and started an affair with a young employee named Karen Wilson, who was engaged to be married. Despite this, Michael pursued Karen relentlessly, making himself out to be a miserable and unhappy lover. He was so drawn to Karen that after 2 months, he decided to end things with 33-year-old Carrie Hall, whom he had grown tired of. Michael told Karen a fabricated story about being unhappy in his marriage and promised to leave his wife soon. Karen eventually gave in, and they became intimate in the office. A week later, she broke off her engagement and waited for Michael to follow through on his promise. Michael didn't plan to divorce Vicky, but he wanted to end their connection and start a new relationship with another woman. To achieve this, he lied to Vicky, telling her that he had already filed for divorce and moved in with his parents. This was a fatal mistake, as Vicky became suspicious that he was still cheating on her. Decided to take action, Vicky waited until Michael was in the shower and took his phone, but she found nothing incriminating because he had deleted all text messages and changed the password on his social media account. Undeterred, Vicky waited until Michael fell asleep and then took his work laptop, where she discovered his account on the social network was still active. On the laptop, she found conversations with his new girlfriend, in which he confessed his love, claimed to be divorcing his wife, and said he was living with his parents. The discovery was a huge shock for Vicky. She took screenshots of the intimate messages as proof of her husband's infidelity and saved them on her laptop. She also found several hotel room receipts in his wallet, which further implicated him. The next morning, Vicky confronted Michael with the evidence, and for the first time in their relationship, she lost her temper. Michael tried to apologize and promised to change, but Vicky threatened to tell his parents everything, hoping they could finally make him see sense. Michael was furious when his wife Vicky threatened to reveal his secrets to his parents. In a fit of rage, he slapped her. Vicky, determined to carry out her threat, got up and headed for the door. Michael caught up with her, grabbed a heavy jewelry box from the dressing table, and hit her twice on the head, knocking her unconscious. Then, he squeezed her throat with his hands until she stopped breathing. With no remorse, Michael wrapped Vicky's lifeless body in a blanket, packed it into several large garbage bags, and carried it to the garage. He then quickly cleaned up the house, removing most of Vicky's belongings. After calling Karen, he invited her over and they had dinner, enjoying themselves in the same house where he had just murdered his wife. The next day, Michael ran off with Karen, leaving behind the scene of his crime. Michael told his parents that his wife had left him for another man. To convince them, he went to their home, cried on his mother's shoulder, and showed her messages on his wife's phone. But what he didn't reveal was that he had sent those messages himself, pretending to be his wife. The messages said that she had lost interest in him, met someone else, and wanted to live with this new person. Meanwhile, Michael also sent messages to his wife's parents from her phone, saying that she had fallen in love with someone else, left with him, and asked them not to contact her and give her space. The Smiths, concerned about their daughter Vicky, immediately tried to contact her, but their calls were consistently rejected. In response, they only received messages asking them to give her time, which seemed strange to them. They then decided to visit Michael's house to get some answers, but his story only raised more questions and doubts. When they discovered that Vicky had stopped showing up for work without warning, they became even more worried and decided to file a police report. On December 1st, 2009, the police launched an investigation. It was discovered that Michael had purchased a shovel, rope, rags, and detergents from a hardware store that day, which seemed suspicious. However, he hadn't disposed of the body by the time the police arrived at his home. Although the police didn't find anything incriminating, Michael's behavior and story raised many questions. What was particularly striking was that they overlooked a large package in the corner of the garage. During the initial inspection of the marital home, no signs of the missing woman's clothes, documents, or personal belongings were found, suggesting that she might have voluntarily left. However, Vicky's laptop was discovered in the bedroom, and upon seizing it, the police found screenshots of Michael's conversations with his mistresses, which Vicky had saved. The police then requested a geolocation of Vicky's cell phone, which regularly received messages from her husband and relatives. The search revealed that the phone had been in the marital home the entire time. In a subsequent search of the Roberts home, law enforcement officials made a disturbing discovery in the garage. But just as they were processing this new evidence, Michael suddenly vanished from under their noses, taking a wallet with cash that allowed him to remain hidden for several days. Michael's money ran out, so he turned to one of his mistresses, Lavina T., asking to stay with her for a while. However, one evening, she heard on the news that Michael was wanted for murdering his wife. Without hesitation, she reported his whereabouts to the police, leading to his arrest. When questioned, Michael broke down in tears, claiming he was innocent. He insisted that his wife's death was an accident, resulting from a consensual intimate game where she asked him to strangle her with a rope belt, but he overdid it. However, forensic experts uncovered contradictory evidence. The autopsy revealed that Michael's wife was strangled with bare hands, attacked from behind, and had 2 extensive hematomas on her head that occurred before her death, ruling out any connection to the alleged intimate game. Michael's trial began in January 2010, where he continued to plead innocence and hoped for leniency. Nevertheless, the autopsy results proved that Michael brutally hit his wife twice on the head and then strangled her, hiding her body in the garage. Michael Roberts was convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison, but with the possibility of parole after serving 17 years. This means that, if he demonstrates good behavior, he may be eligible for release as early as 2020. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Nancy Paola Reyes. Nancy Paola Reyes Gorcey was born on April 13, 1991, in Granados, Guatemala, to Jorge and Pren Gorcey, a poor family of 7. Despite their financial struggles, her parents were determined to provide their 5 children with a good education, hoping they would have better lives. Nancy excelled in school, which enabled her to enroll in the University of Vilanova, where she earned a degree in business administration and document management with honors. However, her academic achievements did not immediately translate to career success. She worked part-time as a cashier and later became an administrator at a supermarket, but her professional growth stagnated. During her university years, Nancy was in an unregistered marriage with a man whose identity remains private, and they had 2 daughters together. Unfortunately, the relationship ended and the couple separated. The father of the children lost interest in their well-being and failed to provide financial support. Nancy lived with her parents and daughters, working at a supermarket with no clear future prospects. The family struggled financially, barely covering essential expenses. However, Nancy's older sister's decision to immigrate to the U.S. in 2013 changed everything. Her sister found a good job, got married, and settled down, inspiring Nancy to make a similar change. Instead of the U.S., Nancy chose to relocate to sunny Spain. The problem was that Nancy didn't have enough money to buy a one-way plane ticket, let alone cover initial expenses. So she worked hard for several years, saving diligently until she finally had enough money to make her dream a reality. In July 2018, Nancy bought a ticket to Madrid, promising her parents she would stay in touch to alleviate their worries. Her plan was to find a place to live and a job upon arrival, with a few €1,000 to cover rent, food, and essentials until she could secure a steady income. When Nancy left, she was 27 years old, and her daughters, who stayed with their grandparents in Guatemala, were 7 and 5 years old. After a brief stay in Madrid, Nancy moved to Barcelona and later settled in Cádiz, the capital of the province of Cádiz, Spain. She kept in close touch with her family, calling home almost every day to check in on them and regularly sending money to support them. Over time, her remittances enabled her parents not only to support themselves and her daughters, but also to renovate their old house. Although Nancy didn't have a steady job, she made a living by doing odd jobs like cleaning houses for wealthy families and caring for the elderly and sick. Despite the challenges, Nancy never complained and was optimistic about her decision to move to Europe, where she believed she had more opportunities. She was convinced that she could never have earned as much back in Guatemala, even if she worked non-stop without days off. Nancy was pleased with her new life and even planned to bring her daughters to Spain once she had saved enough to rent a comfortable and spacious home for the whole family. Nancy initially kept her personal life private, citing her busy work schedule as the reason. However, in the spring of 2020, she confided in her parents about meeting Carlos Andres Bustamante, with whom she had begun a romantic relationship. The two had met by chance while Nancy was searching for a new place to live, and as they spent more time together, their relationship blossomed. They eventually moved in together, with Carlos being a year older than Nancy. At the start of their relationship, Carlos didn't have a steady income, relying on small, odd jobs to get by. As a result, Nancy became the primary breadwinner, covering their housing and bills, and often providing financial support for Carlos's personal expenses. Despite this, Nancy never expressed any concerns to her family, leading them to believe that she had found a loving and supportive partner. Nancy's two younger brothers had also relocated to Spain, and she remained in close contact with them, especially Dennis, the youngest, who had met Carlos and found him likable. In June 2020, Nancy and Carlos decided to move to Santander, a resort city on the Atlantic coast. When Nancy spoke with her family, she mentioned that the climate was warmer and there were more job opportunities. However, this was when problems in her relationship with Carlos started to emerge, which she tried to keep hidden. Carlos turned out to be jealous, hot-tempered, and even cruel. He had no career ambitions and was content to be supported by Nancy. Moreover, he struggled with alcohol abuse and occasionally used prohibited substances, despite repeatedly promising to quit and find a stable job. When Nancy discovered she was pregnant, she was already questioning whether to continue her life with Carlos. Carlos was overjoyed by the news and promised that their life would improve, but in reality, things only worsened. He continued to drink and use drugs, taking money from Nancy or asking his mother for it. Worse still, he began physically abusing Nancy, which she tried to conceal from everyone. On the evening of August 12th, a disturbing scene unfolded while Nancy was video chatting with her parents. Her partner, Carlos, suddenly burst into a fit of rage, yelling at Nancy and demanding to know who she was talking to. Refusing to believe her when she told him it was her mother, he snatched the phone from her hands. After verifying the truth by glancing at the screen, he carelessly tossed the device onto a chair and walked away. The very next day, a similar incident occurred. Carlos again wrestled the phone from Nancy's hands while she was speaking with her parents and daughters. He insisted on knowing who she was talking to, hurled insults at her, and even made threats. A terrified Nancy later attempted to downplay the situation to her relatives, attributing Carlos's behavior to excessive jealousy and assuring them that everything was under control. However, her concerned parents urged her to report the incidents to the police, but Nancy insisted on handling the matter herself. On August 17th, Nancy had a concerning phone conversation with her sister. She stated that if anything happened to her, Carlos would be responsible. Although her words were ominous, she didn't explain further, only asking her sister to take care of her children if needed. This was the last time her sister heard from Nancy. Nancy vanished on August 20th around 2 p.m. She sent a text to her father, promising to call later that evening, but she never did. Her family tried contacting Carlos, but he didn't respond either. The situation was alarming because the couple had recently moved to Santander, had no friends there, and Nancy's brothers were on the other side of the country. A few days later, a suspicious message came from Carlos's phone, claiming that he and Nancy had argued and decided to separate. The message stated that Nancy had left to find a new apartment, ignoring his calls, and he had no idea where she was. Nancy's brothers suggested that Carlos come to Ciudad Real to file a missing person report with them. Carlos agreed, but he never showed up, didn't file the report, and ceased communicating with the family. Nancy's relatives reached out to the police to file a report about her disappearance. In the meantime, Nancy's friends provided her brothers with the address of Sandra Bustamante, Carlos's mother. When they visited her, she became emotional and confessed that she had suspected her son might do something harmful to his partner, but she didn't provide any specific details. Sandra also claimed to have no knowledge about the whereabouts of her son and his fiancée. Although Carlos wasn't answering her calls, he sent her brief messages asking her to stop inquiring and to give him some time. Despite liking Nancy, Sandra was aware of her son's capabilities and understood his true nature. Sandra went to the police station the next day for questioning about Nancy's disappearance. She told the officers what she had already shared with Nancy's brothers: Carlos's troubling behavior and a lengthy text message from Nancy. In the message, Nancy warned Sandra not to give Carlos any money because he would waste it on alcohol and drugs, which made him aggressive and cruel. Nancy said Carlos had no intention of finding a job or overcoming his addictions, and his behavior had become increasingly threatening, making her consider leaving him. She believed it was better to end their relationship before someone got hurt. The investigation also uncovered some disturbing information about Carlos. He had been convicted of bodily harm multiple times, including brutally beating his own mother when he was 17. Although he only received probation at the time, he later served short sentences for assaulting women he lived with and had relationships with. The investigation into Carlos and Nancy's relationship revealed many red flags from the start. Carlos had a history of aggression, drug addiction, and a criminal record, which was compounded by his uncontrollable rage. Meanwhile, Nancy's friends disclosed that she was not just a housekeeper or caregiver, as she had claimed. Instead, she was providing escort services to wealthy clients in Santander, earning a substantial income. Carlos was aware of her occupation and initially accepted it, as it allowed him to avoid finding work himself. However, when Nancy became pregnant, Carlos's behavior became increasingly erratic. He grew suspicious about the child's paternity, wondering if it belonged to one of her clients. Additionally, he was consumed by jealousy, vacillating between preventing her from interacting with other men and forcing her to continue working to support them financially. Meanwhile, Carlos squandered the money he took from his mother on his own vices, leaving them struggling to make ends meet. After nearly a week of unexplained absence, Nancy and Carlos's whereabouts were unknown. Although Carlos had been in touch through messages, he never revealed his location. It wasn't until August 26th that police finally obtained a search warrant for the couple's vacant rental apartment in Santander. The discovery they made was gruesome and left no doubt that Nancy had met a tragic end. Bloodstains were found throughout the apartment, with some attempts made to clean them up, but most were still visible to the naked eye, including in the clogged bathroom and toilet drains. The police also found fragments of bones, hair, skin, and internal organs. Forensic analysis confirmed that these belonged to Nancy, even though her body was not found in the apartment. The crime scene suggested that Nancy had been brutally killed, dismembered in the bathroom, and her remains disposed of elsewhere. Carlos was quickly identified as the main suspect in the case due to evidence found in the apartment, including a package from a local hardware store with his fingerprints on it. The package was for a small hatchet, but the tool itself was not discovered. Further investigation revealed that Carlos had bought the hatchet, along with rubber gloves and large trash bags, at a nearby market on August 20th. This was confirmed by security footage from the store. An elderly vendor who sold Carlos a small cart also positively identified him from a photo. The day after the gruesome discovery in the apartment, Carlos surprisingly surrendered to a Madrid police station, attempting to shift suspicion away from himself. He claimed to be reporting Nancy missing, but was promptly arrested as the prime suspect in the heinous crime. Carlos professed his innocence, stating that he and Nancy had argued and parted ways on August 20th, after which he left town in an emotional state, unaware of any subsequent events involving Nancy. He suggested that someone might have attacked her when she returned to gather her belongings. However, Carlos's alibi seemed dubious, especially considering the police found his fingerprints on the hatchet's packaging. Despite conducting an extensive search of nearby wastelands, sewer systems, and the coastline with the help of divers, no trace of Nancy was found. To further investigate, the police tracked Carlos's movements from August 20th to 26th, using his mobile phone signals, revealing that he had spent 3 days traveling along the coast and visiting Bilbao and Burgos before heading to Madrid. It was clear that Carlos was trying to conceal his activities, but it seemed unlikely that he would travel across the country with a dismembered body, leading authorities to continue their search in Santander. Street surveillance footage captured Carlos's movements on the evening of August 20th. He was seen walking towards a large forest park, but returned to his apartment late at night. He then left again, this time pushing a cart filled with unusual, oddly shaped bags. Since there were few cameras within the park, Carlos vanished from view once he entered the wooded area. Later, he re-emerged with the same cart, but it was now significantly lighter. He then proceeded towards the railway tracks, which were located near a steep cliff overgrown with bushes. After visiting this area, Carlos returned once more, but this time without the extra weight, providing law enforcement with a clear lead on where to search for the body. On September 16th, police discovered bags containing badly decomposed human remains in a heavily overgrown area on a hillside. The remains were identified as those of Nancy Gorcey, who had been dismembered into 20 parts using a hatchet. Although security camera footage showed everything Carlos had transported in a cart was recovered, one crucial item was still missing: the fetus of the 4-month pregnant Nancy. The state of the victim's genitals and lower abdomen revealed a brutal mutilation with a knife and hatchet, suggesting that the killer had removed the fetus and disposed of it separately from the mother's body. Despite mounting evidence, Carlos refused to admit his involvement, providing contradictory statements and trying to shift the blame onto an unknown attacker. However, traces of Nancy's blood were found on his clothes and shoes, which he had attempted to wash off but failed to completely remove. Through diligent investigation, authorities were able to reconstruct the sequence of tragic events and the entire scenario of the crime, ultimately incriminating Carlos. Forensic experts have reconstructed the events of August 20th. After an argument, the man brutally beat and strangled his pregnant partner, Nancy, in the kitchen, where bloodstains were later found on the floor and walls. Next, he moved Nancy's body to the bathroom, went shopping at a hardware store in the market, and then used a hatchet and large kitchen knife to dismember her body into 20 pieces. He placed the pieces in bags and loaded them into a cart. That night, he took the cart to a park, searching for secluded areas to dispose of the body parts. He followed a pre-planned route, scattering the bags in various locations, hoping they would never be found. The fate of the fetus removed from Nancy's body remains unknown. Carlos denied his guilt, claiming to have loved Nancy from the time of the murder until his arrest in Madrid. He used the money he stole from Nancy to fund his daily bar hopping across various cities. The investigation and search for evidence and witnesses took nearly 2 years, and the trial did not begin until July 2022. In November 2022, Carlos was found guilty of the premeditated, brutal murder of Nancy and her unborn child, as well as the dismemberment and desecration of her body. However, many considered the sentence too lenient. Carlos was sentenced to 25.5 years in prison and ordered to pay €150,000 in compensation to Nancy's parents. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Danilo Cavalcante. Danilo Cavalcante was born on July 3, 1989, in Esto, a municipality in the state of Maranhão, Brazil. Unlike many children, he wasn't pampered or comforted with bedtime stories. He didn't have the luxury of being escorted to school at a young age. Instead, he grew up on the streets, a common experience for children in poor Brazilian neighborhoods. The environment in Brazil's favelas was marked by extreme poverty, low living standards, and high unemployment rates. These challenging conditions created a breeding ground for street crime to flourish. When you're exposed to poverty, lack of basic necessities, and violence from a young age, your instincts for self-preservation kick in. People survive by any means necessary. Unfortunately, many individuals who grow up surrounded by violence often resort to similar behavior because it's all they know. The Brando family easily adapted to their new life, enjoying their cozy home and improved lifestyle. Deborah and her sister Sarah were extremely close, not only working together at their cleaning service, but also frequently talking on the phone throughout the day. They had achieved the peaceful and happy life they had moved to another country for. However, a chance encounter would soon alter the course of their lives forever. While spending a day off with her children at the park in 2020, Deborah met Danilo Cavalcante, a 31-year-old fellow countryman. A strong bond quickly formed between them. Danilo was very attentive to Deborah and kind to her children, which made her fall in love with him. She believed she had found a trustworthy and suitable partner. After a few months of dating, they rented a small house and started living together as a family. Initially, everything seemed perfect, but over time, Danilo's hot-tempered and emotional personality began to surface. As his relationship with Deborah deepened, he became increasingly jealous and possessive. Baseless mistrust gradually turned into complete control in their relationship. Scandals erupted repeatedly, leading to violent outbursts. Every night, Dino would get drunk and return home as a completely different, angry person. He demanded total submission from Deborah, punishing her severely in front of the children if she resisted. Despite his abuse, Deborah refused to back down and fought to protect her children. Fed up with the mistreatment, Deborah fled to her sister's home and eventually sought help from the police and the court, obtaining a restraining order to keep Cavalcante away. However, Cavalcante continued to stalk her, threatening violence if she tried to end the relationship permanently. Terrified for her life, Deborah began to investigate Danilo Cavalcante's true identity. By reaching out to acquaintances in Brazil through social media, she uncovered information about his past life and reasons for entering the United States. The truth about her lover's deception left Deborah in shock. On November 5, 2017, Danilo Cavalcante shot and fatally wounded his 20-year-old friend, Walter Jr., Moreira das Rios in Figueroa, Brazil, over a dispute about a car repair debt. Cavalcante fled the country before authorities could arrest him due to a delay in registering the arrest warrant in the National Warrant Registry. 7 months later, in June 2018, a warrant was issued for his arrest. Cavalcante entered Puerto Rico illegally and obtained a fake ID, eventually settling in Chester County, Pennsylvania, where his sister lived. After Danilo's true identity was revealed, Deborah demanded that he leave her alone, threatening to expose his secret if he refused. However, this ultimatum proved to be a fatal mistake. On the evening of April 18, 2021, Deborah was walking with her children in front of her house, chatting quietly with an elderly neighbor while her kids played nearby. Danilo approached her, and the neighbor, who remained waiting, watched as they conversed calmly. But without warning, Danilo pulled out 2 knives and launched a brutal attack on Deborah. As she fell to the ground, he stabbed her repeatedly. Her terrified children screamed for him to stop, but Danilo was consumed by his own agony. He inflicted a total of 38 stab wounds on Deborah. A horrified neighbor attempted to stem the bleeding and provide emergency aid. Meanwhile, Deborah's daughter rushed to the neighbor's house to call for help and summon emergency services. Deborah Brendo was rushed to PO Hospital, but sadly succumbed to her injuries. Meanwhile, Danilo Cavalcante fled Pennsylvania to evade arrest, remaining at large for several hours until he was eventually apprehended by Virginia State Police. Danilo Cavalcante was extradited to Pennsylvania and arrested in Chester County on August 16, 2023, pending trial for first-degree murder. The investigation revealed that Cavalcante had refused to accept the end of his relationship with Deborah and had subjected her to domestic violence and intimidation since 2020. During the trial, Deborah's child, who was present during the traumatic event, gave emotional testimony, recalling the horrific details of that day. The jury quickly reached a guilty verdict, sentencing Cavalcante to life in prison without parole. After the verdict, Cavalcante was taken to the Chester County Jail in Pocopson, where he awaited transfer to a federal prison. However, on August 31, 2023, at around 9 a.m., he escaped from the jail by climbing up a chimney, using the narrow space between two walls in the exercise yard to bypass the barbed wire fences and evade surveillance cameras. Danilo Cavalcante escaped by walking up the roof, running across it, climbing over the fence, and pushing through the barbed wire. This was a surprise, as prison officials thought they had fixed all the weaknesses in the prison system after a previous escape by Igor Bull. They had even added more barbed wire after another inmate, Igor Bolta, escaped a few months earlier. The authorities quickly launched a massive search for Danilo Cavalcante, with alerts going out everywhere. The Pennsylvania State Police Chief gave regular updates to the public through press conferences, asking residents to be vigilant and help track down the escaped prisoner. This strategy worked, and within hours, Danilo Cavalcante was spotted walking along a road about 2 miles west of the prison. On September 2nd, with the help of local residents, authorities used surveillance cameras to spot Cavalcante in the early morning hours. They quickly set up a search perimeter around the area, securing roads and railroads to prevent his escape, and offered a $10,000 reward for information leading to his capture. The initial search focused on a 2-mile radius around the jail in Pocopson Township and Chester County, which is heavily wooded. Just days after the escape, a local resident spotted Cavalcante in a creek bed, but he managed to flee into the woods before police arrived. The search continued, and the perimeter expanded after a week. A security camera then captured Cavalcante on film at Longwood Gardens, a popular botanical garden, nearly 3 miles from the jail and just south of the initial search area. The search team has been bolstered with more personnel and advanced equipment to locate Cavalcante. As part of their efforts, helicopters flew over the search area, broadcasting a recorded plea from Cavalcante's Portuguese-speaking mother, urging him to surrender peacefully. The next morning, a security camera detected Cavalcante on a property approximately 2 miles south of the prison. In response, police established a new perimeter around the facility, Longwood Gardens, and nearby schools, which were closed during the search. As the search entered its 6th day, tension mounted in the community. With a convicted murderer on the loose, locals were anxious for answers about Cavalcante's prison escape. In response, police advised Philadelphia residents in Chester County to take precautions, including locking doors and windows, securing vehicles, and staying indoors. Pennsylvania prisoner Danilo Cavalcante, 34, escaped and sparked a massive manhunt. On September 9th, a crucial breakthrough came when Cavalcante was spotted on a video intercom call at a former colleague's home near Phoenix, about 20 miles outside the original search perimeter. Cavalcante, who was skilled at altering his appearance, had shaved and changed into new clothes, allowing him to evade detection as he traveled across the state. He stole a van from a dairy store and drove it to Phoenixville, seeking help and shelter from acquaintances. The abandoned van was found the next morning, September 10th, in a field in suburban East with an empty gas tank. As the search continued, the focus shifted to northern Chester County, and authorities updated the search perimeter. On September 11th, Cavalcante was added to the Interpol list, and the reward for information on his whereabouts was increased. That night, a local resident called emergency services to report a burglary at his garage, describing a suspect matching Cavalcante's description. The homeowner defended themselves by shooting the intruder, Cavalcante, 7 times. Despite being injured, Cavalcante managed to flee the scene and steal a .22 caliber rifle with a scope and flashlight from the home. When police arrived, they found Cavalcante's sweatshirt and shoes near the house. After identifying the perpetrator and learning the time he was now armed, police warned residents in the South Coventry neighborhood to secure their properties by locking doors, windows, and vehicles, and to stay indoors if possible for their safety. A breakthrough came around 1 a.m. on September 13th when an aircraft equipped with thermal imaging technology detected Cavalcante in the woods. However, due to poor weather conditions, police had to wait until sunrise to approach the location. Just after midnight, a security alarm went off within the search perimeter, leading authorities to the suspect's location. According to officials, the thermal imaging technology played a crucial role in tracking down Cavalcante, ultimately leading to his capture. On September 13th, around 8 a.m., the police found Danilo Cavalcante, a dangerous criminal, asleep with a stolen rifle. He attempted to flee by crawling into dense undergrowth, but a police dog named Yoda caught him by biting his head and holding him until the police arrived. According to Lieutenant Colonel George Biven, Yoda inflicted minor head injuries on Cavalcante during the capture. Biven explained that the police were able to approach quietly, which gave them the element of surprise, allowing them to capture Cavalcante without anyone getting hurt. Immediately after his capture, Cavalcante was questioned and revealed that he had survived on watermelons and creek water, traveled only at night, and even had a close call with a police officer while hiding. He had planned to steal a car and escape to Canada. Since being returned to prison, Cavalcante has been charged with multiple crimes related to his escape, including burglary, trespassing, and theft. Following Cavalcante's capture, local and state officials, including Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro, expressed their gratitude to the numerous law enforcement officers who contributed to the search. Following Cavalcante's escape, the police set up a perimeter several miles in each direction. The Chester County Jail Board, responsible for overseeing the Chester County Jail, faced intense criticism from local residents for failing to prevent Cavalcante's escape. Residents argued that the jail had the opportunity to implement necessary security upgrades after Igor Boll's escape attempt on May 19th, and that these upgrades could have potentially prevented Cavalcante's escape, as he used the same method as Bolta. The prison has taken action against the guard who was on duty during Cavalcante's escape on September 7th, citing that the guard had a clear chance to stop Cavalcante during the escape. Following the recapture of the offender, the Chester County Jail has implemented new security measures, including the installation of a tin roof over the area where Cavalcante climbed up 2 walls to reach the roof and escape. Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro emphasized that Chester County officials need to provide answers regarding the escape, considering the prison's past history. He praised the collective effort of law enforcement agencies and local residents who work. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Karina Vetrano. On August 2nd, 2016, Karina planned to meet her father after work to spend some quality time together. Since Miss Vetrano had moved away, family gatherings had become infrequent due to everyone's busy schedules. Karina in particular had a lot on her plate, juggling 2 jobs. Philip picked up Karina from work and took her to his home, where they shared stories about their week. Before leaving, Karina invited her father to join her for a jog, as they often did, covering several miles together. However, Philip declined, citing severe back pain that couldn't be alleviated. He offered to call her a cab instead, but Karina preferred to jog, enjoying the pleasant weather and fresh air. Moreover, she was training for an upcoming marathon to take her mind off her recent breakup. A jog was just what she needed to clear her head. That evening, the Vetrano family said goodbye to their youngest daughter, Karina, as she left for a jog at 5:45 p.m. Her usual route took her to Spring Creek Park, a peaceful oasis in the midst of the city. However, her father, Mr. Vetrano, warned her to stick to familiar paths and avoid talking to strangers, as parts of the park were overgrown with thickets and swamps. Ignoring her father's advice, Karina wandered into a secluded, grassy area in search of solitude. Tragically, her decision proved fatal. A sudden, sharp pain struck the back of her head, and she fell to the ground. As the hours ticked by, the Vetrano family grew increasingly anxious. It had been 2 hours since Karina left, and she should have been home by now, or at least answering her parents' frantic calls. But there was only silence, and a chilling uncertainty settled over the Vetrano household. Philip's anxiety grew as he sensed something was wrong, so he sought help from his neighbor, the chief of the New York City Police Department. The two were on good terms, and the chief knew Philip wouldn't worry unnecessarily. After reporting Karina missing, the police launched a search in the park area and surrounding streets, using experienced canine units. The first 24 hours are critical in missing person cases, so they utilized all available resources before nightfall. Meanwhile, Mr. Vetrano, accompanied by a group of volunteers, searched for his daughter on his own. He thoroughly combed the park, making phone calls along the way. As dusk fell, he spotted a light in the grass and upon closer inspection, found Karina's phone. Philip hoped that maybe she had simply lost her phone and hadn't notified them. Philip, her father, pushed through underbrush towards police officers but stumbled upon a lifeless young woman, partially undressed and face down. As he turned her over, his heart sank. It was his daughter Karina. A scream erupted from his lips as the truth hit him. His darkest fears realized. The news was too much for Mr. Vetrano to bear. The police, responding to his anguished screams and cries, rushed over to restrain him, carefully pulling him away from Karina's lifeless body. They explained that the area was now a crime scene, and every detail, no matter how small, was crucial evidence. To preserve the integrity of the investigation, the officers gently but firmly asked Philip not to touch or disturb anything in the surrounding area. On his way home, Mr. Vetrano was consumed by thoughts of how to break the devastating news to his wife about their daughter's passing. Memories of the past flooded his mind, including the day their second daughter was born on July 12, 1986, in Queens. He felt immense pride in her from a young age, recalling how obedient and well-mannered she was. He vividly recalled taking her to her first day of school and her academic achievements, which led to her earning a master's degree in speech pathology from St. John's University. Karina had always dreamed of helping children, particularly those with autism. She was a multi-talented individual who loved to travel, write, and engage in sports, especially running, which was a shared passion between them, bringing them closer together. As a father, he had been protective of her relationships, wanting her to be truly loved and hoping she would build a strong family like his own, eventually giving him loving grandchildren. As Mr. Vetrano returned home, the journey felt like an eternity. He paused at the entrance, taking a deep breath to calm himself. I need to be strong for my family, he thought. I have to pull myself together. His wife met him at the door and immediately understood the gravity of the situation from the look on his face. Kathy cried and embraced her husband, offering comfort. As the news spread, relatives and friends struggled to come to terms with what had happened. They were shocked and disbelieving, finding it hard to accept the brutal and sudden death of her. The investigation revealed that Miss Vetrano had been the victim of a brutal attack. It was clear that she had fought back, Her clenched fists and the bruises and abrasions on her body were evidence of her resistance. Her athletic clothing was torn, and the autopsy showed that the back of her skull had been damaged by a blunt object, likely a stone. However, the cause of death was ultimately asphyxiation, with a clear mark visible on her neck. The forensic examination provided disturbing evidence that Karina Vetrano's death was a violent and intimate crime. The experts' findings supported the police's initial suspicions. Traces of earth and grass were found under the victim's fingernails, suggesting that she tried to free herself from her attacker's grip. Further examination revealed that her teeth were knocked out and cracked, indicating that she bit her attacker in self-defense. The multiple scratches on her neck indicated that she used her hands to try to pry the attacker's grip loose. Karina's determination to survive is evident in her fierce struggle. In life, Karina was a creative and thoughtful person who enjoyed writing. She had starred in a short film based on her poem Paradox in 2013 and often wrote about complex topics such as love and mortality in her blog posts. Tragically, shortly after her death, another jogger's body was found in a similar location in Princeton, Massachusetts. A woman walking alone in a secluded area suffered a similar attack. At first, it seemed like the same perpetrator as in previous cases, but geneticists compared DNA samples from the crime scenes and found no connection between the crimes. Surprisingly, the DNA samples didn't match, indicating they came from different individuals. Of particular interest was the DNA found under the victim's fingernails, on her back, and on Karina Vetrano's phone. Although the DNA was present in small amounts, experts were able to analyze it, and for a long time, it remained the only lead in the investigation, offering hope of identifying the attacker. Due to the fact that most murders are committed by someone the victim knows, the police had to consider every possibility. To aid in the investigation, the victim's father, who was the first to find his daughter's body, provided a DNA sample. Unfortunately, this procedure was conducted on the day of Karina's funeral, which was a poorly chosen time. Later, all of Karina's relatives also underwent DNA testing, but none of the results matched anything. Detectives questioned Karina's family and friends to see if anyone had a grudge against Mrs. Vetrano, but they found no one who might want to harm her. Everyone they spoke to respected and loved her. Next, they considered the possibility that the crime was committed for selfish reasons, such as meeting Karina in a secluded spot and attacking her. Unable to make progress, the investigators turned to the public for help, offering a $10,000 reward for information that could identify the perpetrator. The public responded, and detectives pursued over 250 leads, conducted 600 DNA tests, and compiled more than 1,700 reports. However, all their efforts were in vain, and it seemed that the perpetrator might not have a prior criminal record, which made the investigation even more challenging. Then on August 31, 2016, a utility worker came forward with information, saying he had been in a restricted area of the park when Karina died, and had seen a man emerging from the bushes, who then ran north. The New York Police Department created and distributed a sketch of the suspect based on a witness's testimony. However, by December 2016, they began to consider the possibility that the person in the sketch might have been an innocent bystander who was simply in the wrong place at the wrong time. Unfortunately, the release of the sketch did not generate any new leads, and the investigation stalled once again. On December 4, 2016, the FBI joined the investigation into Karina Vetrano's death. They created a psychological profile of the perpetrator, suggesting that the individual was very familiar with the area, particularly the park where the incident occurred. This led them to believe that the attacker might have lived or still lives nearby. However, the FBI thought that the perpetrator was now avoiding the area, fearing capture. The police realized that the perpetrator had chosen the quiet, overgrown area of the park to commit the crime because it was easy to conceal his actions. Following this theory, the police screened local African American men, but this did not produce the desired result. Chanel Lewis, a young African-American man who lived in a low-income housing complex in Brooklyn, about 4 or 5 miles from Spring Creek Park, did not stand out as a suspect at the time. Chanel lived with his mother, 3 sisters, and their children. He had been diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia, but this didn't hold him back from graduating from a special school for students with emotional and behavioral issues. In school, Chanel was a quiet loner who was often bullied by his classmates. They would tease him about his clothes and appearance, and some girls even intimidated and punched him. Although he would sometimes try to fight back, he was no match for his tormentors. Instead, he would often smirk and walk away, earning him the nickname African Lizard. Despite this, a classmate named Danielle remembered Chanel as a smart kid with good grades who liked to share funny videos on the bus. She never saw him be mean to anyone. There were some reports that Chanel had once talked about wanting to bring a knife to school when he was in middle school. However, the head of his school later transferred, Dr. Edward Dana, said that they had no record of such threats. During Chanel's time at his school, he never got in trouble and never made any threats towards his fellow students. Chanel Lewis had a tough time as a teenager, often facing bullying and experiencing trauma. Despite this, he dreamed of working in social services to help people in need. When conflicts arose at home, he would take long walks, frequently visiting a local park. Lewis had a few minor run-ins with the police, including 2 incidents in Spring Creek and another for public urination in May 2016. In another incident, a store owner accused Lewis of loitering in his shop with a crowbar. When the police responded, they checked Lewis's ID and let him go, since he didn't have a prior record. Although this incident seemed minor at the time, it would later become crucial in the investigation into Karina Vetrano's death, which occurred in February 2017. Detective John Russo remembered a crucial detail from the investigation: a suspicious young man in a hoodie who would often lurk in the park, walking slowly and stopping in front of houses as if scouting for potential burglary targets. Although Russo lost sight of him, he didn't forget the encounter. The next day, a store owner reported an incident, and a teenager matching the description came to the police's attention. 2 months into the investigation, Russo revisited the memory of the suspicious individual, wondering if he might have witnessed something crucial, leading investigators to focus on Chanel Lewis. As they dug deeper into Lewis's background, his peculiar behavior, and a disturbing claim that he had expressed a desire to harm girls raised serious concerns and suspicions. With no other leads, the police decided to concentrate their efforts on Lewis. After Karina's death, it was discovered that Chanel Lewis had left his family's home after an argument and went to the park. When he returned, he was disheveled and had torn clothes, bruises, and abrasions. His mother asked what had happened, and Chanel claimed he was attacked. A witness's description of a man fleeing the park matched his account, which fit with the timeline of events. When investigators reviewed the medical records, they found Chanel's story plausible. However, they noticed similarities between Chanel's events and Karina Vetrano's case, raising suspicions. On February 4, 2017, Chanel voluntarily provided his DNA at the police station, which seemed unusual for someone who might be guilty. The interrogation of Lewis began the next day. He acknowledged being in the park on August 2, 2016, around 5 p.m., but specified that he was walking on dirt paths and listening to music. He admitted encountering Karina jogging with her phone. When detectives asked if something happened during their encounter, Lewis nodded and softly replied, "Yes." The response was cryptic, suggesting confusion. The investigators grew frustrated as Lewis struggled to provide a clear explanation. Finally, he stated, "I was angry, and things escalated. What happened, happened." The detectives remained skeptical, concerned that this vague admission might create doubt among jurors in a potential trial. They pressed Lewis for more information, and he eventually confessed to the crime. Chanel recalled that during the attack, His punches knocked out several of Karina's teeth and injured his own hand. The struggle lasted around 5 minutes, during which time Karina fiercely resisted, scratching and biting to avoid drawing attention. Lewis dragged her off the path and into the tall grass, where he attempted to undress and assault her. Despite being shocked, Karina continued to resist. Eventually, Chanel strangled her until she was no longer alive. When questioned about his relationship with the victim, Chanel claimed he had not known Karina before the attack and that it was a chance encounter. The motive behind the attack was unexpected and bizarre. Chanel's hatred and uncontrollable aggression were triggered by a neighborhood gang member playing loud music for hours on end. These negative emotions were then unleashed on Karina. Although the reason behind the attack was strange, investigators' confusion was resolved when DNA comparison results matched perfectly. The microscopic traces found on the victim's body and phone belonged to Chanel, leading the police and prosecutor to conclude that the case was solved and ready for court. Chanel Lewis's motive for killing Karina Vetrano seemed unlikely. However, it's possible that he had seen her before at the park with her father and had become interested in her. When she rejected him, he might have become angry and attacked her, leading to a tragic series of events. At the trial, which began on November 5, 2018, Lewis pleaded not guilty despite his earlier confessions to the authorities. His family also denied his involvement in the crime. The prosecution charged Lewis with murder and sexual assault, which carried a sentence of 25 years to life imprisonment. The debate about Lewis's guilt went beyond the courtroom, with the media also discussing the case. Lewis's defense team argued that his arrest was unlawful and that there was racial bias and discrimination. However, the judge dismissed these allegations, stating that the investigation was conducted legally. The prosecution presented DNA evidence that linked Lewis to the crime scene. The defense argued that the evidence was contaminated due to the large number of people present at the scene, including the victim's father. Nevertheless, a forensic biologist stated that the odds of the DNA belonging to someone else were incredibly low, 1 in 6 trillion. The prosecution also presented Lewis's phone records, which showed that he had searched for terms related to forgiveness and second chances in Catholicism. This raised the question, what was Lewis trying to atone for? The release of Lewis's confession video sparked further controversy, with the defense arguing that the confession was coerced and that the police had fabricated evidence. The defense suggested that the initial investigation was botched and that Lewis was made a scapegoat due to public pressure for an arrest. The jury was impressed by the defense's arguments, but ultimately they were unable to reach a verdict, leading to a mistrial on November 21, 2018. A retrial was scheduled for March 2019, and after 5 hours of deliberation, the jury found Lewis guilty of Karina Vetrano's murder. He was sentenced to life imprisonment without parole on July 23, 2019. Despite the defense's attempts to delay the trial, the jury found Lewis guilty. The case highlights the deep-seated prejudices and fears in society. Karina Vetrano's death serves as a grim reminder for women to be cautious. In the end, justice may have been served, but both families lost their children. Welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Jared Bridegan. Jared Bridegan was born in 1989 in Florida to a modest family as the second of 2 sons. He and his older brother Adam were close from a young age and grew up together. Their parents were devoted members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. As a teenager, Jared met Mallory Bowden at church, and they developed a romantic relationship. She would later call him her first true love. However, their religious beliefs discouraged cohabitation before marriage, so when Jared graduated from high school in 2007, they went their separate ways. He moved to Utah to attend college. In 2009, at the age of 20, Jared met his future first wife, Shannon Gardner, at a friend's birthday party. She was 2 years older than him and came from a wealthy family. Shannon Gardner was born in 1987 to Starling and Shelley Gardner, founders of Stampin' Up!, a successful company that produced and sold craft items. By 2010, the family business, based in Salt Lake City, generated $100 million in annual revenue. Shannon's sister, Sarah, holds a management position in the company. As a member of a wealthy family, Shannon grew up with luxuries and never had to work as a chef, despite being trained in the profession. After meeting her partner, they got engaged just a few months later and married in a lavish ceremony in Salt Lake City in early 2010, with her family covering all expenses. Their religious beliefs, which discouraged cohabitation and long engagements, influenced their quick decision to marry. After the wedding, they settled in Utah, where Shannon's parents helped them buy a comfortable home worth around $1 million. They, Shannon and Jared, traveled extensively, sharing their luxurious lifestyle on social media. They received significant financial support from Shannon's parents, who gave them around $10,000 monthly and allowed them to use their accounts freely. After Jared graduated, his in-laws gave him $100,000 to start his own business. In 2013, they had twins, Abigail and Liam, and initially moved to Connecticut. However, when Liam was diagnosed with a heart condition and lung issues, they relocated to Florida, following doctors' advice that the sea air would be beneficial for his health. They bought a comfortable 2-story home near the coast in Ponte Vedra Beach. Shannon managed a popular blog, presenting herself as a devoted wife, caring mother, chef, and fitness enthusiast who loved travel and sports. She regularly visited the gym, prompting Jared to surprise her by hiring a personal trainer. After moving, their marriage began to fall apart, and they soon found themselves in the midst of a scandalous divorce. Despite their efforts to put on a brave face, it was clear that their relationship was troubled. One of the main sources of tension was their differing levels of commitment to their religion. Shannon had grown disillusioned with their faith and stopped attending church, while her husband remained a devout follower. This disparity led to arguments, misunderstandings, and ultimately to the breakdown of their marriage. Shannon grew unhappy with Jared, feeling he was lazy, had gained weight, and wasn't putting enough effort into his business despite taking online courses. However, Jared eventually got a job at Microsoft and worked his way up to a senior manager role. Despite this success, the couple grew apart and started arguing frequently. Things took a turn for the worse when Jared found out about intimate messages between Shannon and her personal fitness trainer. Although Shannon denied having an affair, the trainer admitted to it in a conversation with Jared. Jared then reached out to Meller Bowden, saying his wife had become distant and emotionally attached to her trainer, but he was willing to forgive her and save their family for the sake of their children. In 2015, after almost 6 years of marriage, the couple started a bitter and dramatic divorce process. They fought over their shared assets and custody rights for their children, with Jared accusing Shannon of infidelity, which she denied, saying the marriage had simply lost its spark. Shannon retaliated by accusing Jared of being cruel and offensive. Shannon and Jared disagreed on how to divide their assets, including their home, cars, and bank accounts. Shannon claimed that most of what they had was given to her by her parents or purchased with their money, since Jared had only recently started working. Jared argued that he was entitled to at least half of their Florida home. The couple also disputed custody of their twins. Shannon accused Jared of trying to manipulate the children against her when he spent time with them, allegedly coaching them on what to say about her and recording their statements to use in court. In response, Jared accused Shannon of invading his privacy by installing hidden cameras in their home, tapping his phone calls, and tracking his movements with a GPS device in his car. Shannon sought full custody of the children and ownership of their seaside home. She claimed Jared threatened to use their children's trust funds for himself. Jared countered by accusing Shannon of tax evasion, alleging that she worked off the books at her parents' company and received large sums of money. After their divorce, Jared and Shannon continued to argue in court for nearly 7 years, despite having shared custody of their children. During this time, they both started new families and had more kids. Jared met Christina, a co-worker at Microsoft, in 2016. At first, their relationship was professional, but they eventually became romantically involved. Christina moved to Florida to be with Jared, and they got married in the fall of 2017. They had their first child, a daughter named Bexley, in February 2019, and their son London was born in August 2021. Shanana got married again in 2018 to Mario Fernandez, a real estate businessman who is 1 year younger than her. They had a son named Michael that same year. The family lived in the same house where Shanana used to live with her first husband, Jared, which was a point of contention during their court battles. Despite the new families, the conflicts between Jared and Shanana did not subside, and they continued to file lawsuits against each other with new demands. Jared wanted to restrict Mario's access to the twins when Shanana was not around, while he wanted his new wife, Christina, to play a bigger role in raising his older children. The last court hearing between Jared and Shanana, which took place 4 months before Jared's death, was extremely tense. They made more accusations against each other and fought over their property rights. Shanana claimed that Jared was preventing her from using the family's more comfortable vehicle to transport the children because he was more concerned with embarrassing her than with their convenience and safety. After the court granted Shanana exclusive rights to the larger vehicle and ordered Jared to pay her $600 in compensation, they established a routine for their children's care. As part of this agreement, Jared picked up their twins on Wednesdays for a family dinner, which often included their younger sister Bexley. Christina sometimes joined them, but after having her baby, London, she prioritized spending time with him and avoided leaving him with babysitters. On Wednesday, February 22, 2022, Jared followed this routine, taking the children to Coastal Cafe after picking them up. After dinner and a walk, he dropped the twins back at their mother's house and headed home, taking his usual 40-minute route. This route included a stretch of road without streetlights that was quite deserted. As he drove cautiously, aware of his 3-year-old daughter sleeping in her car seat, he encountered an unexpected obstacle around 9 p.m. when the sun had set. Suddenly, in the headlights, he spotted a tire lying in his lane. Jared stopped his car to move a tire that was in the road, so he turned on his hazard lights and got out of the vehicle. That's when someone started shooting at him. The attacker was very close and shot Jared multiple times with deadly accuracy before running away. Luckily, the child who was sleeping in the car was not hurt. A person who was nearby heard the shots and carefully approached the scene. They found Jared lying on the ground, bleeding badly. They immediately called the police and ambulance, but unfortunately, it was too late to save Jared. Christina, Jared's wife, had spoken to him just minutes before the attack. He told her he had just dropped off their kids and would be home in about 15 minutes. But when 30 minutes passed, then an hour, and Jared didn't come home, Christina started to worry. She tried calling him again, but this time, a police officer answered and told her what had happened. The officer asked Christina to come to the police station in Jacksonville Beach right away. The investigation at the scene revealed that a tire on the road caused Jared's vehicle to stop. After getting out to remove the tire, he was shot. Fortunately, his 3-year-old daughter, who was sleeping in the car, was unharmed, suggesting she was not the shooter's target. The absence of stolen valuables, including a wallet with cash, phone, and tablet, ruled out robbery as a motive. When questioned about potential enemies, Christina mentioned Jared's first wife, Shannon, but declined to make accusations without solid evidence. Unfortunately, there was no surveillance footage due to the lack of cameras in the area. A witness reported hearing the shots, which broke the night's silence, followed by the sound of a vehicle speeding away, although nothing was visible in the darkness. Christina's hint that Shauna might be involved in the crime seemed reasonable at first, but detectives doubted she was directly responsible, given her strong alibi. She was at home with her husband, their twins, younger son, and visiting parents at the time of the incident. Instead, the police focused on reviewing nearby surveillance footage. The cameras showed an old dark blue Ford F-150 with brown trim entering the area about 15 minutes before the incident and reappearing a few minutes after the witness reported the shots. The police asked the public for help in identifying the suspicious vehicle. Jared's family made TV appeals, urging anyone with information, no matter how small, to come forward. The first suspect was arrested, but Shauna and her current husband Mario repeatedly denied any involvement in the murder when questioned by detectives. Shauna openly admitted that her relationship with her ex-husband was complex, but insisted she would never wish harm on the father of her children. In media interviews, she shared how her 9-year-old twins reacted to the news of their father's death. Abigail cried uncontrollably for hours, while Liam was in shock and remained silent for a long time. It's notable that neither Jared's ex-spouse nor his older children attended his funeral. This was because Christina had made it clear to Shanana that she was not welcome at the ceremony, and Shanana had countered that if she couldn't attend, the twins wouldn't go to the burial either. Almost a year after Mr. Brand's murder, the first suspect was finally arrested in January 2023. The police had been secretive about their investigation, only disclosing that it required significant resources and effort. However, their persistence paid off when the dark blue Ford F-150 was involved in an accident and fled the scene before the police arrived. This breakthrough led to an arrest. The police chief and city prosecutor announced that 62-year-old Henry Teenon, an unemployed man with a criminal record, had been charged with several crimes, including second-degree premeditated murder, participating in a conspiracy to commit murder, and setting up an ambush that obstructed the victim. Teenon, hoping to receive a lighter sentence, agreed to cooperate with law enforcement and provide information about the crime. As a result, the criminal partnership began to fall apart, and news soon spread that Teenon had been renting a house with a friend owned by Mario Fernandez. After Teenon pleaded guilty and agreed to testify against Mario, Mario was arrested. There were rumors that Shanana, Mario's wife and Teenon's former lover, was the mastermind behind the murder, allegedly motivated by her long-standing dislike for her then-husband. Despite strongly denying all accusations, Shanana eventually left town, relocating to Washington with her 3 children, just a few months after her husband's arrest. Shanana Gardner Fernandez was arrested on August 17, 2023, at her Washington apartment on the same charges as her current husband. She was extradited to Florida to stand trial with her co-defendants. Her alleged motive was to avoid sharing custody of her 2 children with her ex-husband and to gain control of disputed assets due to complicated relationships. The legal case is ongoing, and all defendants are currently facing legal proceedings. Shanana's husband, Teenon, has pleaded guilty to all charges and is cooperating with the investigation in hopes of receiving a lighter sentence. He is likely to face a minimum of 15 years in prison, which may be equivalent to a life sentence given his age. Mario Fernandez has partially admitted his guilt, but is refusing to testify against his wife, exercising his legal rights. Shanana Gardner Fernandez, however, denies all charges against her. Despite this, prosecutors are seeking the death penalty or life imprisonment without parole. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Ben Rennick. In 1989, the Rennick family relocated to a charming farmhouse where Ben developed an interest in snakes. However, their happiness was short-lived. In September 1992, a gas leak caused an explosion at their home while they were away, forcing them to move into a trailer. Rennick family faced another challenge when Ben's mother, Kim, was diagnosed with advanced breast cancer. Despite these difficulties, the close-knit family supported each other through thick and thin. In 2002, they moved into a new home that included a special room for Ben's snakes. Tragically, Kim lost her battle with cancer in 2009. Before her passing, she made her sons promise to preserve the farm and pass it down to their children. Ben's passion for snakes only grew stronger, and he eventually founded Rennick Reptiles, earning recognition worldwide. He began selling snakes globally, from the UK to Japan, and breeding them became his life's purpose. Ben, a dedicated and passionate breeder, put the needs of his snakes above financial gain. His reptile farm was a treasure trove of reptilian subspecies, featuring both common and rare species from around the world. The value of his python collection alone exceeded $1 million. Despite his professional success, Ben felt lonely and longed to start a family. That changed in 2010 when he met Lindley at a party. Their relationship blossomed quickly, and soon he introduced her to his brother Sam and his fiancée, Eli. As it turned out, both Eli and Lindley had sons from previous relationships, which helped them bond and become fast friends. Lindley seamlessly integrated into the Rennick family, and they began living together. As Ben's partner, Lindley assisted him on the snake breeding farm. They were deeply in love and functioned as a united family even before making their relationship official. In March 2012, Lindley gave birth to their daughter, Amelia, filling Ben with joy as he became a first-time father. However, their happiness was short-lived, as Ben's father, Frank Rennick, faced significant business troubles stemming from fraudulent stock transactions made to cover medical bills for his wife, Kim's treatment. Frank took his own life just one day before the FBI was scheduled to visit the farm. The investigation came to a halt as a result, and Frank's sons, Ben and Sam, were deeply affected by the loss of their father. After their parents' passing, the brothers put aside their grief to support each other. Ben inherited the family home and farm, while Sam received a large sum of money that was significantly more than the house was worth. Despite having their own families and children, the brothers decided to stay together in their childhood home, forming one large, close-knit family. Sam used his inheritance to repair the farm, and initially everything seemed fine. However, financial disagreements soon caused tension between the brothers. After their father's passing, Ben focused on his business and family. He married Lindley on April 14, 2014, making her a full member of the Rennick family. Ben and Lindley opened a second business, a spa called Essentia Spa Inc., which Lindley managed. However, the spa struggled financially, leading to frequent arguments between Ben and Lindley about money. Despite her best efforts, Lindley was unable to generate enough revenue to cover the spa's expenses. At the same time, Sam and his wife struggled financially. Ben granted them permission to sell some of the furniture in the house, but Lindley strongly disagreed with this decision, which caused a rift between the two families and ultimately led to an irreparable breakdown in their relationship. Ben planned to sell some rare reptiles to improve his family's finances, but the deal fell through because of a tragic event that occurred on the farm on June 8, 2017. On that day, Lindley found her husband Ben lying in a pool of blood on the floor of one of the farm's barns. She called her brother-in-law Sam for help and reported the emergency, saying she had found Ben unconscious. During the call, Lindley abruptly dropped the phone and ran outside. Sam continued talking to the emergency operator and sadly confirmed that his brother had died. Sam suspected that a snake might be responsible for the incident. The Montgomery County Sheriff's deputies were eventually called to the snake breeding facility, a place they hadn't visited in a long time. However, they were hesitant to enter the farm, fearing they would encounter over 3,000 snakes while investigating the scene where Ben's body lay in blood. Coroner Dave Colbert approached the scene with caution, aware of the possibility of a deadly viper attack. However, upon closer inspection, he found a shell casing on a shelf, indicating a far more sinister scenario. Multiple shell casings were discovered near the body, but no weapon was found. The autopsy revealed that Ben had been shot multiple times in the back and head. Despite this, none of the relatives reported hearing any shots or seeing the attacker. Sam and Lindley, Ben's relatives, were taken to the sheriff's office for questioning. During the interview, Lindley suggested that Sam might have been involved in Ben's death, citing a potential motive. Ben wanted to sell the house, but Sam was opposed. To clear his name, Sam agreed to take a lie detector test, which he passed. With no evidence to hold them, the police released Lindley and Sam. The investigation continued, exploring various theories about who might have wanted Ben Rennick dead. The police initially suspected that Ben Rennick's death might be linked to robbery, but this theory was quickly ruled out because none of the rare snakes in the house were taken and no valuables were missing. In the days following Ben's death, the police questioned Lindley, Ben's wife, and tested her hands and clothing for signs of gunpowder residue. However, the test results came back negative. After Ben's funeral, Lindley cut off all contact with her brothers-in-law, Sam and Eli, and began making moves to sell her husband's business and claim a $1 million life insurance payout. Her plan was to use the insurance money to pay off the mortgage on the Rennick family home, which she intended to sell for $740,000. When Sam and Eli found out about Lindley's quick insurance claim and her plans to sell the house, they became suspicious and notified the authorities. Sam, in particular, suspected that his brother's wife might be involved in Ben's death and shared his concerns with the investigators. As a result, Lindley was questioned again by the police, during which she revealed that she had a complicated relationship with Ben and had been secretly meeting with a man named Eric. Although Eric had an alibi, it seemed suspicious to the investigators. Lindley made some stunning confessions. Approximately 3 years into her officially recognized marriage, she admitted to having had affairs with at least 2 different men. Furthermore, text messages exchanged between the couples imply that Ben had been suspicious of his wife's infidelity, which had been causing significant tension in their relationship lately. On October 5, 2017, Lindley underwent a polygraph test conducted by the Missouri State Highway Patrol, but the results indicated deception. While the test raised suspicions, it did not provide sufficient concrete evidence to directly implicate her in Ben's murder, so she was released from custody. The investigation persisted, albeit at a slower pace. It was later discovered that Lindley had attempted to kill Ben a month before his death. She had fabricated a story about Ben being abusive and shared it with a coworker at a spa salon, gaining their sympathy and assistance. The coworker helped Lindley plot to kill Ben by making him a protein shake laced with 15 Percocet pills. Unbeknownst to Ben, he drank the shake and fell severely ill, but survived, unaware that he had been poisoned. Lindley was questioned by investigators 6 times. A major breakthrough came on January 14, 2012, when a witness from a state prison came forward claiming to have information about Ben's death. The witness, Brandon Blackwell, told investigators that Lindley had shot Ben and conspired with her ex-boyfriend. Brandon said he dated Lindley, who was married to Ben, and they had a child together about 1.5 years after Ben's death. However, by 2019, they had broken up. Brandon claimed that Lindley told him she plotted with her coworker Ashley Shaw and her ex-boyfriend Michael Humphrey to kill Ben. Lindley and Michael were arrested for Ben's murder, but they blamed each other for the crime. Michael said that on the day of the murder, Lindley asked him to pose as a buyer at the farm, and he was supposed to shoot Ben while wearing gloves. However, he couldn't bring himself to do it. According to Michael, Lindley then took the gun and shot Ben herself. The investigation into Ben's death took 3 years. On January 16, 2020, arrest warrants were issued for Lindley, Michael, and Ashley. Ashley was given immunity in exchange for her cooperation and testified against Lindley, her former boss at the spa salon. Ashley said that Lindley had complained about Ben, claiming he was abusive and belittling, and convinced her to help with a plan to kill him. Lindley feared that if she divorced Ben, he would gain custody of their children, so she plotted to kill him by poisoning him with a lethal cocktail. When questioned, Lindley and her accomplice Michael accused each other of Ben's murder. In October 2021, Michael Humphrey went on trial in Ain County. His lawyers hoped to reduce his sentence by revealing the murder weapon, which would lead to a second-degree murder charge. Although Michael had the gun, no conclusive DNA evidence was found on it to lessen his sentence. However, he made a deal with the prosecution, revealing the location of the murder weapon. In exchange, he received a life sentence for second-degree murder without a trial on January 3, 2021. This meant Michael Humphrey would be imprisoned for life with the possibility of parole. The trial of Lindley Rennick started on December 6, 2021, for the shooting death of her husband Ben Rennick on June 8, 2017, at his snake breeding facility in New Florence. According to court documents, the plot to kill Ben originated at Lindley's spa salon. The probable cause statement revealed that Ben knew about Lindley's financial troubles and her fear that he might take their children away, leading her to falsely claim domestic abuse. The first attempt on Ben's life involved a protein shake laced with drugs, which was confirmed by search warrants for their Facebook accounts. These searches also showed that Ben was aware of Lindley's financial issues. In court, the events of the day Ben was killed were reconstructed through cross-examination. On that day, Michael Humphrey picked up Lindley from the spa salon, while Shaw sent deceptive text messages from Lindley's phone, hiding their true location and trying to mislead the investigation, according to court documents. Humphrey tried to kill Ben, but couldn't finish the job, so he asked Lindley to do it for him after firing some shots. In his hurry, Humphrey picked up most of the bullet casings, but missed a few. After returning to the spa, Lindley took a shower, which helped remove any gunpowder residue from her hands and clothes. Humphrey also got rid of Lindley's clothing to avoid raising suspicion. During the trial, defense attorney Catherine Barrere tried to portray Lindley as a victim of domestic violence by highlighting her personal history, family, education, and her relationship with ex-boyfriend Michael Humphrey. However, no evidence supported this claim, weakening the defense's argument. Lindley was involved with Michael Humphrey, who was part of a group that plotted to kill Ben. Lindley described their relationship as codependent, with Humphrey dealing drugs and her being addicted. She broke up with Humphrey in 2010, but reconnected with him about a month before Ben's murder. Lindley Rennick denied planning to kill her husband Ben, including the alleged attempt to poison him with a protein shake. At the time, their spa business was failing, and they were experiencing financial and marital problems. Lindley admitted to having affairs with multiple men, which she deeply regretted. When she considered divorce, she didn't know who to turn to, given her father's experience with divorce and his strong views on the matter. She reconnected with an old boyfriend, Michael Humphrey, seeking support to discuss divorce with Ben. In court, Lindley confessed to intentionally hiding Michael's involvement in Ben's death due to their troubled marriage, which included disagreements, physical and sexual abuse, and the stress of Ben's snake breeding business. She was afraid of Ben and worried about his reaction when she would bring up divorce. On June 8, 2017, Lindley brought Michael to their farm, claiming she only wanted to discuss divorce, not harm Ben. She took out the trash, then saw Michael and Ben washing their hands in the nursery. She didn't hear their conversation, focusing on how to initiate the divorce discussion. Lindley described seeing Michael draw a gun and shoot Ben, after which she screamed, ran outside, and heard more shots. Everything seemed numb, and she stared at the trees as Michael came to her and pushed her towards the car. When she returned to the snake breeding facility and saw Ben's body, reality hit her. She called Ben's brother, Sam, and they checked Ben's pulse and breathing, hoping he might still be alive. Lindley regretted not telling the police about her presence at the facility with Michael, which led to suspicion and investigation. Although there was a $1 million life insurance policy, Lindley waived her rights to the money. She received some financial compensation from a trust set up by Ben's father, which benefited Ben and their children not herself. Lindley shared her story with her then-boyfriend Brandon Blackwell, but their relationship ended after she had his child during the trial. She expressed remorse for her continuous deception, saying she was trying to escape the truth of what happened and never wanted her husband's death. Lindley Rennick's defense team did not request a new trial or appeal her conviction. Instead, she filed a lawsuit against Blackwell, accusing him of making false statements about her role in her husband's death. During the trial, prosecutor Kevin Zellner questioned Lindley Rennick's credibility, pointing out inconsistencies in her story. He asked why she didn't check on her husband after hearing gunshots, didn't call 911, sent friendly messages to Blackwell and Humphrey after the shooting, and continued to lie as emergency responders arrived. Lindley Rennick admitted to suggesting her brother-in-law as a suspect, and Zellner portrayed her as a calculating but clumsy mastermind. He accused her of being heartless for accusing the victim's brother. On December 9, 2021, Lindley Rennick was found guilty of second-degree murder and armed criminal action. She broke down during sentencing, receiving 13 years for murder and 3 years for armed criminal action. In January, the judge sentenced her to a total of 16 years. The victim's family, including Sam Rennick, was outraged, believing Lindley and her co-conspirator deserved life imprisonment. Sam Rennick expressed his disappointment, shocked that his son's life was valued at only 13 years. He felt that Ben's death had destroyed their relationship. However, Ben Rennick's legacy lives on. The reptile community was shaken by his to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Amanda Blackburn. Amanda Grace Buers was born on July 31, 1987, in Muskegon, Michigan. Her family later moved to Indianapolis, Indiana, and then to Elkhart in 1995. Amanda graduated from Elkhart Christian Academy in 2006 and went on to earn an associate's degree from Pensacola Christian College in Pensacola, Florida, in 2008. Amanda was raised in a deeply devout Christian family, where her father served as the lead pastor of First Baptist Church in Elkhart, Indiana. From a young age, she was deeply committed to her faith and had memorized many church sermons. Unlike her peers, who were eager to explore the world and experience adult life, Amanda's desire was to serve Jesus. Amanda was a kind and gentle soul, with a slender build, blonde hair, and a sincere smile. Her thoughts and heart were pure, and she consistently showed love and compassion towards others. As a teenager, Amanda made a vow of chastity, promising not to kiss a man until she was married, and she remained true to this commitment. Amanda's heart raced when she met the love of her life, Davy Blackburn. A native of Tuscaloosa, Alabama, Davy was a devoted Christian who studied religion at Southern Wesleyan University. The two were introduced on a blind date at a Christian concert featuring the band Hawk Nelson, arranged by Amanda's sister and Davy's best friend. Despite attending different colleges, they spent every vacation together, cultivating a deep and innocent connection. Their relationship was free from physical attraction, focusing instead on shared values and faith. They took leisurely walks, discussed their thoughts and favorite Bible passages, and laughed together, finding joy in simple things. On one occasion, before returning to school, they engaged in a playful milkshake drinking contest, which Amanda lost. In a light-hearted moment, Davy teased her, calling her a milk girl. As he looked at her, he knew he had found the woman he wanted to marry. They maintained a long-distance relationship for a long time, relying heavily on messaging apps, phone calls, and extended conversations during their vacations together. They were deeply committed to building a strong and healthy partnership, and to that end, they sought the guidance of a psychologist to learn effective communication strategies. Amanda and Davy Blackburn got married on August 1, 2008. After the ceremony, Davy told friends that he felt a special connection with Amanda, which he believed was part of God's plan. For 4 years, the Blackburns lived in South Carolina, where Davy worked as an associate pastor at New Spring Church under Pastor Perry Noble. However, Davy felt restless and wanted to do more. he suggested to Amanda that they move to Indianapolis to start a new church focused on youth ministry. Amanda was hesitant to leave her family and friends behind, and she struggled with the decision. Eventually, she agreed to move after Davy convinced her that God had big plans for them. In 2012, the Blackburns relocated from South Carolina to Indianapolis to establish an independent church on the north side, targeting young people. They created weekly videos on their website, offering advice on relationships, conflict resolution, and intimate relationships according to the Bible. In 2014, the Blackburn family welcomed their first child, Weston. They lived a happy and comfortable life in a quiet neighborhood, with Davy serving as a popular pastor at a church frequented by many young people. The family was united and content. Tragedy struck on November 10, 2015, when Amanda, who was pregnant at the time, was rushed to the hospital after an ambulance was called to their home. Despite efforts to save her, she died the next day, along with their unborn baby girl, Evie Grace. The news of Amanda's passing sparked an outpouring of sympathy and prayers on social media, with friends, family, and strangers sharing their condolences. On November 11th, the day Amanda was officially declared deceased, Davy released a statement honoring her legacy, saying that she dedicated her life to loving and serving those around her. Amanda Blackburn dedicated her life to spreading the message of Jesus Christ and helping others find salvation. Through her death and legacy, even more people will come to know Christ. I'm certain she wants me to continue the work we started in Indianapolis. Dave Blackburn described the murder of his pregnant wife Amanda as a devastating blow to their Orthodox community and a shock to the entire state. The public demanded justice, calling for the perpetrator to be caught and punished. In his first interview, Dave recounted finding Amanda injured and unconscious on the living room floor, partially naked and surrounded by blood. Dave explained to investigators that he had left the house around 6 a.m. to work out at the fitness center, leaving the door unlocked, as he often did. If he had locked the door, it's possible the criminals might not have entered the house so easily, giving Amanda time to call for help. Amanda suffered 3 gunshot wounds, including one to the head during the attack. Despite a swift investigation, no arrests were made in the days immediately following the crime. The police quickly cleared Amanda's husband, Davy Blackburn, of any involvement in the brutal incident. According to trial transcripts, Davy Blackburn's testimony was supported by that of Scott Floyd, the first emergency medical paramedic from the Indianapolis Fire Department to arrive at the scene. Floyd stated that when they arrived at the house in response to Davy's 911 call, Davy was standing at the end of the driveway with blood on his hands. Scott stated that Davy described his wife Amanda as lying on the floor, unresponsive. Davy claimed to have discovered her after returning home from the gym around 7:30 a.m. and finishing a phone call with his friend Kenneth Wagner. He entered his home at 8:10 a.m. and called emergency services at 8:22 a.m., thinking Amanda was sick or unconscious. However, it's unclear why it took him 12 minutes to make the call and why he didn't notice the brain matter nearby. An emergency room doctor testified that the blood on her head was coagulated, suggesting the gunshot wound occurred around 2 hours earlier. Davy claimed to have only called his father after calling 911. Authorities verified his alibi using surveillance footage from the gym, and he was not considered a suspect. The autopsy revealed Amanda suffered multiple gunshot wounds and signs of a struggle. The investigation included reviewing CCTV footage and interviewing neighbors, one of whom reported hearing gunshots 35 minutes after Davy left the house. The initial theory was robbery, given the missing bank cards and MacBook bag. Police discovered a series of burglaries in the area, including one at a nearby home where a woman reported her phone, laptop, and keys stolen. Another home on Sunnyfield Court was burgled, with several items missing, including a Tiffany pearl necklace and a pink women's sweater. 5 minutes later, Davy reported a burglary at his own home. police looked for connections between the crimes and released images of possible suspects. Davey was confident in the police's efforts to catch his wife's killer, and investigators were hopeful that promising leads would soon lead to the perpetrator. The key clues that helped track down the suspects were a stolen pink sweater, cell phone records, and an ATM receipt. These were found in a stolen Chrysler Sebring, recovered near the Blackburns' home. The debit card on the receipt matched one of Amanda's stolen cards. The investigation into the crime led to a crucial discovery when a search warrant was obtained to review the ATM camera footage. The video showed the driver covering his face with a stolen pink sweater. By combining DNA testing, surveillance footage, and eyewitness accounts, the police were able to identify the suspects. DNA analysis of the sweater revealed that J.N. Watson was one of the individuals involved. This identification was a significant milestone in the case. Further investigation involved obtaining cell phone records. Watson's phone number was already in the database due to a previous burglary conviction for which he was on parole. The records of Diana Gordon's cell phone were also obtained. The data showed that both Watson's and Gordon's phones were in the vicinity of the crime scene when the incident occurred. Moreover, the phone records indicated that Gordon and Watson were near the Chase Bank, where Amanda's debit card was used on the day of the murder. The final piece of evidence fell into place with the identification of Larry Taylor. By examining surveillance footage in the area, the police were able to identify Taylor's phone number and subsequently trace his address. Following the incident, a new development emerged when a gun was reportedly found near the Blackburn home. A man handed the gun over to the Broad Ripple Fire Department, claiming to have discovered it outside the home. Forensic experts analyzed the gun, and after 2 weeks of investigation, police arrested 18-year-old Larry Taylor and 21-year-old J.N. Watson for Amanda Blackburn's murder. A third suspect, 24-year-old Diana Gordon, was taken into custody for a parole violation, but he was not charged with a felony since he did not enter the Blackburn home. Once the crime lab results were in, it was confirmed that the gun found near the victim's home was the murder weapon. All 3 suspects were apprehended. When questioned, Larry Taylor admitted to shooting the woman twice because she allegedly jumped on him and he feared she would scratch him. He then shot her in the back of the head as she lay on the ground and proceeded to watch her bleed to death. A criminal trio, consisting of Taylor, Watson, and Gordon, targeted the Blackburn house on November 10th with the intention of stealing money. The husband had left the front door unlocked when he went to the gym, making it an easy target. Upon entering, they confronted Amanda and Taylor, hit her with a gun to subdue her. Watson and Gordon, feeling uneasy, decided to leave and use the stolen bank cards to withdraw cash from an ATM. They attempted to get $500 from one ATM, but were unsuccessful, and then managed to withdraw $1,400 from another. Their actions were caught on CCTV. The duo returned to the Blackburn house to pick up Taylor, but in their absence, Amanda regained consciousness and fought back against her attacker. Taylor tackled her to the ground and later admitted to shooting her. After the crime, Taylor placed the stolen debit cards in an accomplice's car. The Blackburn home was the third target of the day for the trio. Earlier, they had broken into a house where the resident was asleep, stealing a laptop, wallet, and car. They were caught on camera, but ignored it and moved on. Their next target was another home, which they broke into through a patio window, stealing 4 TVs, a laptop, jewelry, and some unusual items, including a bag of oranges and a pink sweater that would eventually help the police identify them. Court documents revealed the evidence gathered by police against the suspects. The most crucial piece of evidence was Jaylen Watson's DNA, found on a pink sweater used to cover his face during a surveillance video. The sweater was stolen during the second burglary, and Watson used it to conceal his identity while trying to withdraw cash with Amanda Blackburn's stolen bank card. In exchange for a reduced sentence, Watson and Diana Gordon cooperated with the investigation. Larry Taylor, however, waived his right to remain silent and admitted to being near the burglary scene. Although he claimed to be confused, he could not provide a clear alibi. The county prosecutor formally filed charges against the suspects. Larry Taylor faces 13 charges, including felony murder for knowingly killing Amanda Blackburn. Jaylen Watson is charged with a felony, and both he and Taylor face multiple counts of burglary, robbery, and theft. Diana Gordon, already in custody for a parole violation, also faces burglary charges. A fourth individual was aware of the robberies, burglaries, and other crimes but did not participate. After questioning, this person was released. The Indianapolis Metropolitan Police Department's Violent Crimes Unit collaborated with the Gang Unit and federal marshals to apprehend Taylor. Police Chief Rick Height commended the cooperative efforts that led to Taylor's arrest, praising the detectives who worked tirelessly to solve the city's murders without rest. Thanks to Assistant U.S. Attorney Josh Minkler and Prosecutor Terry Curry, justice was served, partly due to the victim's pregnancy. Prosecutors considered filing additional charges related to the fetus, although they found no evidence to support rape charges. Larry Taylor's first trial, held in December 2021, was cut short when it was discovered that a juror had discussed the case with fellow jurors. This led to a mistrial. The second trial, held in October 2022, featured a more rigorous jury selection process. Over 100 potential jurors were called and had to fill out a 16-page questionnaire to assess their ability to reach a fair verdict. Larry Joe Taylor was sentenced to 86 years in the Indiana State Correctional Institution for Amanda Blackburn's murder and additional burglary charges. Diana Gordon and Jaylen Watson agreed to plea deals and testified against Larry Taylor in court, receiving sentences ranging from 20 to 35 years in prison. Both Watson and Taylor are currently incarcerated in the Marion County Jail. In Indiana, a murder conviction can lead to 45 to 60 years in prison or even life imprisonment or the death penalty. Prosecutors sought to enhance Larry Taylor's sentence by 20 years due to the victim's pregnancy during the alleged crime. Davy Blackburn, Amanda's husband and a pastor, expressed relief that those responsible for her murder were caught and would not harm anyone else. Amanda's death had a significant impact, with thousands attending her funeral, including Governor Mike Pence. A donation page was set up to cover funeral and medical expenses. Davy Blackburn chose to forgive Amanda's killers, stating, "I choose the path of forgiveness, grace, and hope." Amanda's case garnered national and international media attention. After Amanda's death, Davy Blackburn transitioned from an unhappy husband to a popular blogger, capitalizing on his tragedy. He created podcasts and videos, sharing. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Carol Maltese. Carol Nicole Maltese was born on September 19, 1995, in a small province in Italy. She was the only child of Fabio and Josephine and had a mix of Italian and Dutch heritage. When Carol was just 4 years old, her parents got divorced, and she stayed with her mother. Her father moved back to the Netherlands, got remarried, and had more children. Carol's mother, Josephine, chose to stay in Italy and raise her daughter on her own. Despite her former husband's lack of support, Josephine worked multiple jobs to give Carol a good education and a better life. Carol grew up to be a kind, sociable, and beautiful girl with many friends. She was active in sports, particularly horseback riding, and loved to dance. She was fluent in 3 languages, enjoyed traveling across Europe, reading, and could talk about almost any subject. As a teenager, Carol became a stunning beauty with a slim figure, and she loved being the center of attention. After finishing school, Carol went on to study industrial design, arts, and fashion at a technical university. She quickly became one of the top students in her class. Carol began dating a young man, a year older, and studying architecture and design during her freshman year. When she was 20, she discovered she was pregnant, which came as a shock to both her and the father. Despite being unprepared, Carol decided to keep the baby. In 2016, Carol gave birth to a son, and she and the father were forced to drop out of school due to financial constraints. They moved to Verona for better job opportunities to support their family. Carol landed a job as a sales consultant at a cosmetics and perfume retail chain when her son turned 1, while her partner worked from home and took care of their child. In mid-2019, Carol started an affair with Angelo, secretly meeting him in hotel rooms and exchanging messages at night. However, just before the new year, the father of her child discovered her infidelity and ended their relationship. Carol thought it was for the best to leave since she was already planning to move in with her new boyfriend. However, a complication came up. Angelo still lived with his parents, and it wasn't possible for Carol to move in there with her child from a previous relationship. So, they made the decision to rent a place together instead. When the economic crisis hit, they lost their jobs and couldn't afford their apartment. Carol moved in with her new boyfriend's parents and made the difficult decision to leave her 4-year-old son with his biological father until things got better and she could bring him to live with her. As the economic crisis worsened, a self-isolation regime was put in place, and everyone was forced to stay at home. Carol struggled financially during this time and relied on Angelo and his parents for support, unable to contribute financially to her son's care. To make matters worse, Carol's mother was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease, which required expensive therapy. With no other options, Carol desperately sought ways to earn money from home to support her son and ill mother. She turned to social media and YouTube, sharing her experiences of living in isolation and the challenges she faced in an effort to generate an income during the lockdown. Carol's early blog posts didn't gain much traction, but her attractive appearance caught readers' attention. She received flattering comments as well as some inappropriate proposals. One subscriber suggested she join OnlyFans, a platform where her looks would be in high demand, and she could quickly become a star and earn a lot of money. Taking this advice, Carol created an account under the pseudonym Charlotte Angel and began posting provocative photos and short videos. She quickly gained a large following of paying customers. While Carol's earnings increased, she kept her new career a secret from her boyfriend and close family members. As time passed, Carol's content became more explicit and sophisticated as she worked to satisfy her fans. She herself found enjoyment in this line of work. However, Carol was able to keep her secret hidden for only about 6 months before someone she knew discovered her account. The news spread quickly, and soon everyone knew how she was making a living. Carol's friends and family in Italy didn't understand her decision to work in the adult film industry. They saw it as immoral and were embarrassed to be associated with her. Carol, on the other hand, was confident that her work was a form of art that could bring her success, wealth, and fame. As she became more popular, adult film studios and directors approached her with offers to star in their films, which she accepted. She started participating in group shoots and public performances, but her boyfriend Angelo was still in the dark, thinking she was working remotely as a designer. However, when Angelo finally found out the truth, he was shocked and unsure of what to do. But when his parents discovered Carol's profession, they demanded that he break up with her immediately, fearing that she would bring shame to their family. Carol's OnlyFans account had become extremely successful, earning her enough money to rent her own place and attracting offers from directors. Her fees continued to rise, and she professed in interviews that this was not a long-term career goal. Instead, she planned to eventually complete her education and pursue a career in design or modeling. For now, she was enjoying her work and was well compensated. Despite her success, Carol frequently spoke about the constant moral pressure she faced from others. Their judgments and attempts to shame her led to feelings of anxiety and guilt. However, she defended her work as a form of art and believed that every woman should have the freedom to choose her profession without fear of judgment. Carol started anew in Rescaldina, Milan province, leaving her adult film career behind and working as a sales consultant at a perfume boutique. However, this fresh start was short-lived. She met David Fontana, a 42-year-old banker and nude photographer online. He was seeking a model, and Carol responded, feeling an instant attraction during their first meeting. Despite being married, Fontana pursued a relationship with Carol, and they began dating, combining photo shoots with intimacy. Fontana learned about Carol's past and encouraged her to return to filmmaking, recognizing her talent. He had complex feelings for her, loving and possessive, yet also enjoying seeing her in adult films. After divorcing his wife in March 2021, Fontana moved in with Carol, and they explored their explicit fantasies together. He assisted her in creating popular content on OnlyFans, taking a share of the profits from their joint ventures. Carol's success in the adult film industry led to her receiving lucrative contract offers from foreign directors and studios. However, her boyfriend Fontana became jealous and reacted angrily when others showed interest in her. Months later, Angelo, who was still in love with Carol, reached out to her and confessed his feelings. He proposed that they get back together, promising not to interfere with her work. Carol was touched by his words but revealed that she was already in a relationship with someone else, David. Despite this, Carol and Angelo continued to stay in touch. However, when David found out about their communication, he became furious and threatened Angelo. He even went as far as setting Angelo's car on fire. Angelo reported the threats and property damage to the police, and a restraining order was issued against David. However, there was no evidence to link David to the arson, so he didn't have to pay for the damages. As Carol's popularity grew, she traveled frequently for shoots and gained over 30,000 followers. She was saving money to buy a home, take her son with her, and eventually leave the adult film industry to focus on raising him and finding a new job. Meanwhile, she started creating custom videos, which became a profitable venture. Carol received scripts from fans who paid her to bring their fantasies to life. She continued to work with Fontana on filming and editing, and they shared the profits and lived together. In September 2021, she met Salvatore Galdo, an actor, on a film set, and they started working together on explicit films. As they worked together, Carol and Galdo developed real feelings for each other, and they began a romantic relationship in secret, afraid of how David, her current partner, might react. She waited for the right moment to tell David everything and end their relationship. A few months later, Galdo proposed to Carol with an engagement ring, and she happily accepted. By the end of the year, she had saved enough money to buy her own home. Carol planned to take her son, Mary, with her and decided it was time to talk to Fontana about her decision. Fontana took the news surprisingly well, understanding that Carol was moving on to her new partner. However, they still had unfinished projects that they had already been paid for, so they agreed to complete the work and then go their separate ways. Carol's sudden and mysterious disappearance in 2022, similar to Carol's earlier vanishing act, left everyone stunned. She abruptly stopped acting in films, discontinued her online streams, and ceased communication with colleagues. Moreover, she refused to accept new project offers from directors. Although many people were aware that Carol had planned to leave the entertainment industry, her complete disappearance still came as a surprise. Carol's friends and husband, Salvatore, grew concerned when she stopped responding to their calls. Despite her reassurances via social media, they sensed something was amiss. Months passed, and Carol's occasional social media posts revealed she'd gone on a seaside vacation without telling anyone. Her brief, curt responses only added to their unease. On March 20, 2022, a passerby discovered large black trash bags near a rocky cliff in the Italian community of Borno. Upon approach, the passerby found human fingers poking through the torn polyethylene. He immediately reported the gruesome find to the police, who discovered 4 bags containing a human body divided into 18 parts. The remains were so disfigured that identification seemed impossible. Forensic experts determined the young woman had died at least 2 months prior, but the cause of death remained unknown. It was clear the body had been stored in a freezer before being dumped, likely to keep it hidden. The criminal had removed distinctive features, tattoos, and skin pieces, then burned, cut, and doused the skin in acid to conceal the tattoos. Despite this, investigators pieced together tattoo fragments and matched them to a missing persons database. A news report about the body led a woman from the adult film industry to recognize the tattoos as belonging to a missing colleague, Charlotte. This information allowed law enforcement to identify Carol, who had become engaged to her coworker, Salvatore Galdo, before her disappearance. What's curious is that he didn't report her missing. Salvatore became the prime suspect, but his distraught reaction and conversation history with Carol seemed genuine. However, his story didn't add up, leading to another suspect, David, being questioned. David showed up at the police station to report Carol missing, oblivious to the recent discovery. His nervous, contradictory story eventually led to his confession. He had accidentally killed Carol. David Fontana claimed to be filming a scenario for a client who had paid a large sum of money. The script involved binding a woman, taping her mouth shut, covering her head with a bag, and brutally beating her with various tools, including a hammer. David was supposed to pretend to inflict severe pain without actually harming her. However, he allegedly went too far and struck her with a hammer, fracturing her skull. Instead of calling for help, he ended her suffering with another blow. Panicked, he dismembered the body and stored it in his freezer for over 2 months before deciding to dispose of it. The investigation revealed that David was the mysterious client who had orchestrated the entire scenario to exact revenge on the woman, Carol, who had decided to leave him. During the torture session, he extracted her phone password, which was supposedly part of the script. On January 11th, David fatally struck Carol with a hammer and used her credit card to buy a freezer, saw, and axe to dismember her body. He disfigured the body to prevent identification and stored the parts in the freezer for over 2 months. During this time, he communicated with Carol's relatives and friends on her behalf, creating the illusion that she was alive. By the end of March, David decided to dispose of the body by dumping it off a cliff. However, the remains were discovered 2 days later, and authorities tracked him down within a week. At the trial, David expressed remorse and claimed that he loved Carol and had taken her life unintentionally. Despite his claims, the court found David guilty of manslaughter and sentenced him to 30 years in prison, ordering him to pay compensation to Carol's son, mother, and the father of her child. Surprisingly, the dismemberment of the body was not considered an aggravating factor, making David potentially eligible for parole.